future, shattered dreams.
Hello, friends. This is Sam Cheney reporting for Weaponized News today, February 7th, 2025. Thank you for joining us on this Friday edition of Weaponized News. Information overload, as always, ever since Trump got in there. It seems a lot to cover today. Freaking lot, man. It's crazy. It's crazy, right? But everybody should pay their taxes, because they just keep uncovering here now billions of dollars. What do we even, billions and billions and billions everywhere, just waste, fraud, abuse, money laundering. It's quite a sight to behold. So it's one thing to uncover all this, but now we need, are we going to throw Congress in prison? They're the ones authorizing the funding of all this. Somebody needs to get in trouble, a whole lot of people. The money needs to be seized back from them and put back in the Treasury Department. It's the people's money. And so they need to have all their, everybody, is 4 years even long enough for all these investigations to track down all these funds? I don't think so. I don't know. It's truly insane. And then it's just a little bit. So DOGE is allegedly, well, they're announcing they are going to audit the Pentagon next. So what are they going to find at the Pentagon? And is there a conflict of interest with Elon Musk being a military contractor, essentially, with his organization DOGE? They're auditing the Pentagon. We're going to have to see what they find out there. What else, man? Just, it's a crazy Friday. Just on and on and on. All these government, abolish the federal government, basically, at this point. I guess leave DOGE, and then they can audit themselves and be abolished as well. At this point, it's just everywhere, every stone you overturn, which we already knew, but now they're bringing the receipts, as they say. And so it's just abolish the federal government at this point. Well, I mean, my God. So Trump has revoked Biden's security clearance. That just came over the wire here before we went on the air, I noticed. So it does look like they're cleaning out the old regime here now, with revoking all security clearances last week of all these intelligence agents, right? And so they, it looks like they are trying to clean up. But can we trust Trump? I don't know. I have a hard time. I have a hard time trusting any government here now. I won't ever trust any government. But they're cleaning out the whole regime, that's for sure. And like the last, 40, 50 years. And so, but AI is going to run everything now? Who's programming the AI? Elon Musk and his team? That's what it looks like. Larry Ellison at Oracle. So then we have all that to deal with. But what I love what they're doing. I can't deny it. But then we got a whole new scientific dictatorship technocracy regime to deal with coming in here now. I guess we got to take it one day at a time, which we will here at Weaponized News. So all of this to go over, just basically unlimited corruption in the federal government. They're bringing a lot of receipts. Trump's making a lot of moves here now. What else do we got? Of course, we have to continue funding the war in Aardvark land. What is it? $7.4 billion in arms deal made there to go ahead and arm them back up to kill some more Muslims over there, which is always nice. We got immigration news. ICE is not doing a good enough job, honestly. We need 10,000, at least 10,000 a day, more than that even, deported out of here. And it's not happening at the rate we need to clean up the illegal immigration in this country. There's protests. We got videos of protests. California, of course. mainly. What else do we got? We need to end. Into the Ukraine-Russia war. None of our business. Ukraine never even would have been able to go to war without the United States, though, right? So funding, arming, and propping up the puppet regime of Zelensky there. And so we need that to end. There's talk of that today. More fallout. More fallout from Trump talking about the U.S. is going to take over Gaza, as we reported on this week. What else? And a whole lot of news to cover. And then to wrap up, we got a long one for you guys today. We got Dr. John Coleman, the Club of Rome, Chatham House, and the Committee of 300. I had the book here somewhere. I should have brought the book but a lecture by him. And for the big nerds that love the deep dives and all these, he covers in this lecture the Committee of 300, the Black Nobility of Venice, as we've been covering here, going over the Venetian connection to the UK and how it was taken over with that system. The Club of Rome, of course, everybody loves them. And the Royal Institute of International Affairs, he covers in his lecture. And so it's a long one. It's like 100. It's like an hour and 43 some odd minutes. And so if you're into the deep dives, then let it play. So that will play us out today for the deep dive into all of these, quote, conspiracy. It is a conspiracy. So it's a deep dive into the one world government conspiracy. Actually, is how I would state that. So we have that to look forward to at the end of the show as we wrap up this insane week. So let me get right to it. This day in history, pretty short here. On February 7th, going back to the year 1569, King Philip II forms the Spanish Inquisition in South America. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition, right? They weren't expecting it in South America, that's for sure. In 1613, Mikhail Romanov, then age 16 years old, becomes the Tsar of Russia. In 1795, the 11th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified and affirmed, affirming power of the states. In 1864, federal troops occupy Jacksonville, Florida. In 1915, to show you how long this technology's been around, over 100 years here now, right? In 1915, the first wireless message sent from a moving train to a station is received. In 1940, Walt Disney's Pinocchio premieres in New York City, second feature film by Walt Disney. And that's going to be the segue, because we're going to show how they talk about human trafficking. In 1940, Walt Disney's Pinocchio. In 1943, shoe rationing begins in the United States. Citizens may purchase up to 3 or more pairs in 1942, and then the next year, shoe rationing began. In 1950, State of Vietnam was recognized by the United States. In 1962, JFK begins the blockade of Cuba. And then 15 years later, after the United States recognized the state of Vietnam, in 1965, the United States begins regular bombing of North Vietnam. Very good of them. In 2009, brush fires in Victoria leave 173 dead in the worst natural disaster in Australian history. Was it a natural disaster? I'm starting to think I'm starting to think, call me a conspiracy guy, but I'm starting to think it was started by arsonists. Just putting it out there, speculation. But yeah, we know it's part of Agenda 2030. Clear the people off the land. I guess back then it was Agenda 21, 2009. But they said it there in Agenda 21 too. Clear the people off the land and get them in these cities to control them. And then seize the land as well. So maybe somebody out there, industrious, that's interested in the largest, quote, natural disaster in Australian history could take a look at that and let us know if it was indeed arson, as they're calling it, brush fires officially. And in California, they're calling it wildfires. It wasn't wildfires, it was arson, straight up. And then, of course, last year on this day, Netanyahu, the Aardvark prime minister, rejects Hamas's ceasefire proposal, saying he will continue till total victory, saying forces will push further south in the city of Rafah. I think we covered it at that time when they made that announcement, but that was, time flies. It's been a year, and the genocide, ethnic cleansing, real estate redevelopment plan continues there in Aardvark land. So let's play the segue to the news here. Again, they're talking about human trafficking here in Pinocchio, 1940, from Walt Disney. What did he know? Or the writers of it, at least. The coachman hires Honest John to collect stupid little boys is the title of this scene. Trafficking, child trafficking in Pinocchio in 1940. All right. Let's play this clip to start us off. In partnership with Bill Gates' EU boss, Ursula von der Leyen, pledges to miracle 500 million children by 2030, saving the world. Wow. We did not see that coming from, or actually we did. Anybody paying attention did, from old Ursula von der Leyen, a cartoon book supervillain, actually. So we do appreciate her public health efforts. On to some economic news here now. January jobs report, and as I continue to report here, they're lying. They have been lying since like 1982 or 3, something like this. But allegedly, it's getting cleaned up here now in the Trump administration. The January jobs report for 2025 indicating a slowdown in jobs growth, with only 143,000 jobs added, lower than expected, although the unemployment rate slightly decreased to 4%. This sparked debate over the effectiveness of economic policies under the Trump administration, with criticisms from Jasmine Crockett suggesting an economic decline. However, experts like Stephen Moore have pointed out that these numbers also reflect the concluding performance of the Biden administration's economic strategy known as Bidenomics. Remember, they got rid of that, actually. I remember reporting on it at the time. They said, we're not calling it Bidenomics anymore. It never caught on because the economy was shit. And they're lying, and they're still lying. Lost in today's job, Zero Hedge tells us here now, lost in today's job revision chaos, over 1 million foreign-born workers found a job, and no native-borns. And so we do appreciate that, the H-1B visa program, and taking American-born American citizens' jobs. We do appreciate those efforts, of course. And they go through the charts and the graphs and all this. But everybody remember, you can go see this yourself. I'll put this on the screen, that they've been rigging the data. And so the data, they tell us the 4% number rigged under Trump, Biden. Maybe DOGE can go take us back to the actual unemployment calculation rate, a lot more accurate. The U3 number, if we go to unemployment here, we can see the this right here, the actual, a lot more accurate number than, see, the government tells us it's like 4%, right? It's actually about 25% here, 24.7, right? And so go to Shadow Stats, and you can find this data too there. So yeah, under Biden, Trump, they've been, like I said, they've been doing it since, what did that say, 1970? Last updated, I know they changed it, but he tells us right here. Anyway, they've been rigging it a long time, and there's the real Shadow Stats number, more like 25%. But and then the money supply, this is crazy right here, this chart, right? The M2 going off the rails. And then now let's take a look at my favorite doomer website here, the US debt clock. They've added DOGE here, DOGE clock. So supposedly, allegedly, this is the money that DOGE is saving, but it can't still offset the national debt. The official, there's all this money off the books, unfunded liabilities and black budget programs that are not even accounted for here. But we're the official, we're pushing, we're almost at 36.5 here. You can see trillion in national debt. And so DOGE is allegedly working on it. And then that gets to, it's coming out crazily, right? Last year, 9 billion of the 35 billion that the National Institute of Health, Fauci's organization, former organization, granted for research was used to administrate overhead, what is known as indirect costs. And so, yeah, their endowment, and Musk made that point. They have giant billion-dollar endowments and then our friends at Johns Hopkins, they're the most beloved directors of the fake pandemic there. They're chump change compared to Harvard, but they have these giant billion-dollar endowment funds. Why are we funding them anything, honestly? And that's a good question. And Musk makes that point, which is a valid criticism. This just came out, 3 hours before we came on. Congress funneled $516 billion into expired programs with zero oversight, excuse me, in 2024. The CBO just revealed that Congress spent $516 billion in 2024 on programs with expired authorization, some dating back 40 years. And so what the hell is going on? Despite rules against funding unauthorized programs, lawmakers ignored them, letting billions flow out, updated approvals or oversight. Even worse, 251 more authorizations are set to expire this year, including $892 billion in defense spending, yet Congress keeps writing the blank checks. This isn't government, it's governance. They changed that now. It's not government, governance. This isn't governance, it's corruption. Congress is recklessly burning taxpayer money on programs they haven't even bothered to approve. So yeah, what do we do with That was a bad graphic. Trying to show you guys the graphic, but it wasn't any good there. What do we do with Congress? It's good, all well and good. Get rid of these corrupt government agencies, USAID, all of them actually. They're just the first to be audited here. But what do we do about Congress? They're the ones authorizing the funding. Vote them out. Does that work with rigged elections? Congress has to be held accountable here now, because they're the ones authorizing this funding for all these corrupt agencies. What do we do with corrupt Congress? They're in wheelchairs, walking on crutches. Still a giant mess, man. They're working on it. I want more faster, okay? I understand it's a giant bowl of corruption. It takes time to unwind. I want more faster, like the deportations. But Trump's buyout plan, now we're up to 65,000 federal employees accept the buyout offer. They should all be probably investigated and thrown in jail, honestly. But they're getting off easy here with a buyout program offered by the Trump administration. But the efforts have been stopped here by a federal judge. Investigate him. And you know what I'm saying? The efforts to downsize the federal government have been stopped, halted by a federal judge until February 10th due to legal challenges regarding the authorization of such offers without congressional approval. We just went over how Congress approves. It's just beyond the pale. Why can't they? The lawyers should go there and say, look, you guys approved $516 billion to defunct programs. And so you can definitely fund the buyout of these federal employees and get them the hell out of here, and don't let the door hit you on the way out, as they say. Okay, that's the economic news from this Friday. Again, I highly recommend everybody go to shadowstats.com and get your real economic data. And don't believe any of this BS that all the headlines tell us, because it's bullshit. It's hard to tell you about all of their economic data, about the money supply, inflation, unemployment, the gross domestic product, all of it. Go to Shadow Stats and see the real data. Okay. This is an odd story that I thought I would play the video of. I don't know what's causing this, but the Serengeti Canal near Buenos Aires, Argentina, turned an alarming blood red yesterday. This unexpected change has prompted concerns about industrial pollution among local residents. Authorities have initiated investigations, taking water samples to determine the cause of the discoloration. The event has captured attention due to the stark visual contrast between the river's usual state and the current vivid red appearance. Let's show some video of that, actually. And it is quite stark. I think it's probably some type of algae, if I want to just guess and speculate. Some type of algae going on turns it red like that. It's the blood of the government that Ola Millet has cut with his chainsaw. That's what it is. No, I believe it is algae, but I could be mistaken. Quite striking images of the Red River there in Argentina. Perhaps a sign. Okay, I know we covered this yesterday, and I know Ruckus wanted to cover it again, and we've both written checks to the White House Faith office here, the Faith Czar, Pastor Paula White. And so, of course, we're fully on board with the Christian Zionist agenda here now, and the fraud that this woman is. Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, Paula White. She's pretty hot for, I don't know how old she is, but is there something going on there? Let's take a look at some images here, and then we'll have a video of her. Yeah, pretty hot, actually, I would say, for a spiritual advisor. But let's take a look at a clip we got from Right Wing Watch. And I don't usually play clips from Right Wing Watch because they're Right Wing Watch. But I think this is a good one and illustrates that why Ruckus and I have already written our checks to go ahead and fund this blasphemy. Let's watch this clip of Paula White, the White House spiritual advisor.
A seed now. Come on, you need to. Some of you are at a place of altar. You got to be at a place of sacrifice. When it's the hardest is when it's sacrifice. Then some of you need to be at a place where you're just obedient out of covenant. And I'm not saying just your tithe. I'm saying covenant. What is the vow you've made unto God? What is it? And then God says, okay, now I'm going to open up your eyes and you're going to get a vision. And there's going to be a mental picture. Come on. There's going to be revelation is what that is. It comes from a Hebrew word that I can't pronounce. But it comes from a Hebrew word that literally means out of revelation. It's a mental picture that is strong enough of your future, that is strong enough to mold your present. So in other words, I'm not just looking to my future, hoping and waiting to get there. My present is lining up with what I see on the inside. If you have spiritual blindness, you're never going to get there. And part of the problems is some people have spiritual cataracts and spiritual blindness. But those cataracts are falling off. I'm already preaching my message. The vision is coming forth because God has a plan for your life. You're going to live in frustration if you don't know what that is. You're going to live in frustration if you settle for less. So I'm challenging you right now. I want you to hear from God. God already spoke to me what I'm to write out. You're going to write your checks to Paula White Ministry. Because this is Power Night. It's different than City of Destiny, all right? This is Power Night. If I want to bless City of Destiny, we'll bless City of Destiny with all of it. But you're going to get a check. If you want to text to give, you can do so. If you want to give by Alexio, you can do so. But every single person gets something significant. Father, we just ask right now that you would speak with clarity. Because some of us are going to build an altar. That altar, maybe that's a sacrifice of $50 or $100. Maybe it's $1,000. Whatever it is you speak. Some of us are going to get a covenant seed right now. But I believe that as we build an altar and we walk in obedience with covenant, that there is vision that's going to be released in the next hour. In the next 45 minutes, if we walk away with open eyes and clarity for instruction, God, then I know that what you've said will come to pass. Now, we aren't buying a miracle. We aren't doing any Jesus junk. We don't do that kind of stuff. We're simply being obedient.
So write your checks now, and you can be saved by the White House spiritual czar or advisor. Wow. Okay. You got a question. You got to say, okay, I like the cutting of government, but what the hell is Trump thinking here? Wow. Okay. USAID, George Soros. And so good use of public funds there. He's already a kabillionaire, right? George Soros, it's being reported, has received $260 million from USAID to undermine America, right? To fund the, what the hell is it? I forget even a stupid Open Society Foundation that they fund all this money laundering and run all these commie groups that can undermine American sovereignty and cause violence and spread their hate against America. And so that's good use of public funds, I guess. Old George Soros getting funded there. And like he needs it either. I guess that's how the rich stay rich is they're already kabillionaires and then they get all this other government money too on top of it. Like the endowments that we just talked about. George Soros here now is Open Society Foundation. It's just quite despicable, honestly. But I guess it's not what you know, it's who you know, especially in the government. Public urges release of Epstein files. I think we covered this yesterday, but yeah, the Pam Bondi said to release it. So the Attorney General saying to release the Epstein files. The public is urging the release of these files. And so who will be caught up in this? Will Donald Trump be caught up in this? Will Bill Clinton be caught up in this? Hell, will Obama be caught up in this? You know, it doesn't matter for Jimmy Carter. He already passed, bless his soul. But who all will be caught up in this? And will we get full transparency? I still have my doubts, but we shall see. Maybe this is how we get rid of Congress, who are appropriating all this funding to corruption. Maybe we release the Epstein files and they're all forced to resign, and then the blackmail held over their head, it no longer has any power, and then we get a bunch of new corrupt Congress. I'm just saying, maybe, possibly, we could dream. Calls to abolish the TSA gain traction on social media. Yeah, I've been calling to abolish the TSA forever, man. Forever. And so the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, has been criticized over its efficiency, over its security measures, and overall impact on travelers. Well, they've never caught one freaking terrorist, and they just date rape you and body scan you. And my most viral report ever on the interwebs, I forget, 2 million, 3 million views. I forget even how many. It went mega viral though for me. I had over 2 million, let's just say 2 million views on a YouTube report I did I want to say 2014 about the TSA beat up a disabled girl, literally beat her up like bad, like bloody, in Tennessee, at a Tennessee airport. I remember that report, and the video went mega viral. And so, hell yeah, abolish the TSA right now. Never caught one terrorist. It's a friggin' joke. And they steal all the passengers. Like I said, they date rape you, body scan you, steal all of your friggin' travel accessories and whatnot. So yeah, abolish the TSA. Maybe they can be next. Yeah, they're targeting DOGE. Trump and Musk target USAID amidst funding concerns. Yeah, abolish USAID. Do we have video of that? I think they're putting up a new. Oh yeah, here's video. They put up. They took the sign off, and I guess it's now the customs office. Here's video of them changing the sign here at USAID. So they're gone, man. They're gone. Massey tells us that he's concerned the House and Senate will fully fund USAID in March when the continuing resolution of government funding comes up again to avoid a government shutdown. We'll shut down the whole freaking government. Massey says he's a no vote on it. So, yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, vote no on it. Okay. Musk and DOGE to audit the Pentagon spending. And going all the way back to the day before 9/11, remember Donald Rumsfeld told us that $2.3 trillion were missing from the Pentagon. And that was what, 2000, right? So, and then of course the terrorist, Al-Qaeda, just so happened to fly a plane into the Pentagon where all of the receipts and paperwork for the investigation and investigators happened to be housed. How convenient that was. But You know, this damn terrorists, damn Al Qaeda in Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh, wait, they were from Saudi Arabia. Oh, never mind. We're not going to go down the 9/11 rabbit hole right now, but everybody, I'm sure, viewers of this show remember that famous clip of Rumsfeld announcing the 2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And then they blew up the whole investigation. So what is going to happen here with this new audit? And there's like $1 billion salary report. Catherine Austin Fitts covers it. Was it the last time I saw it? It was like $97 trillion or something. It's just like, I can't even count that freaking high. I don't even know how many zeros that is. A lot of freaking zeros. So what are they going to find here at the Pentagon? And will we start seeing terrorist attacks and assassinations over it? Because the military industrial complex are not nice people. You know what I mean? They have no problem killing as many people as they need to kill to profiteer. And so, but doesn't Musk have a direct conflict of interest with himself being a military contractor? So we're going to have to follow this one pretty close. Pretty close. Here's some video with Trump today announcing it at a press conference with the Japanese guy, president or prime minister.
Quickly to follow up on what Peter was asking, have you directed Elon Musk to review Pentagon spending, given it's the biggest discretionary spending in the federal budget?
Yes, I have Pentagon, education, just about everything. We're going to go through everything, just as it was so bad with what we just went through with this horrible situation we just went through. And I guess 97% of the people have been dismissed. It was very, very unfortunate. You're not going to find anything like that, but you're going to find a lot. And I've instructed him to go check out education, to check out the Pentagon, which is the military. And, sadly, you'll find some things that are pretty bad. But I don't think proportionally you're going to see anything like we just.
I think the friggin' Pentagon's even going to be worse if they're honest with us. Hegseth, the new Secretary of Defense, vows to audit the Pentagon. Let's watch this video of him. Hegseth did a Pentagon town hall meeting today. Let's watch a short video where he's talking about the audit here of the Pentagon.
That includes a Pentagon audit, which to the Marines out there, y'all got to figure it out. And we appreciate that. Lean and mean. We are going to focus heavily to ensure that at a bare minimum, by the end of 4 years, the Pentagon passes a clean audit. The American taxpayers deserve that. They deserve to know where their $850 billion go, how it's spent, and make sure it's spent wisely. It used to be that if you called for an audit, somehow you were undermining the department. I believe the exact opposite. I believe we are accountable for every dollar we spend, and every dollar of waste we find or redundancy is a dollar we can invest somewhere else, as President Trump has committed directly to rebuilding our nation's military. So rebuilding our military is key.
What are they going to find there? Do we even... Just a stupid, goofy one, the big balls. I don't know if you guys saw this. You probably did. CNN discusses big balls, the government expert debate. CNN broadcast inadvertently became a source of widespread amusement when it featured a segment on a 19-year-old government expert known online as Big Balls. I don't know if you part of the DOGE team. I guess we'll play that clip. It's Friday, right? It's pretty goofy, but they're upset about it.
So this is a 19-year-old high school graduate who has used the unfortunate nickname Big Balls online. So that would be one way that we could refer to him. He is now working at Musk's behest inside DOGE. And we looked into his background. And so we found, several notable things, Aaron, one of which is that this individual has founded multiple companies, including one with another unfortunate name, Tesla.sexy LLC. which he established in 2021. He would have been around 16 years old. Now, this LLC controls dozens of web domains.
So, Kara, you hear this, and you have known Elon Musk for years. So now you look at these young men who are now in data and in the private information about maybe hundreds of millions of American citizens as young as 19, the big balls here that Katie's talking about. Most of them are in their early 20s. There's an exception I'm going to get to in a minute. I'm curious, though, Kara, how well does even Musk know these young men, do you think?
I have no idea. I think there's no vetting whatsoever, as you can see, that's taken place. It took Katie and the really great team. Wired has done an astonishing job here. I could make a joke that's probably why he was hired for all this ridiculous nonsense and other nefarious things. But, there's an expression in technology that's not it's a feature, not a bug.
They seem to like saying big balls. Goofy. Okay. NASA removes pronouns from communications under new policy. And so sadly, they, them will no longer be able to scam us at NASA. What about an audit of NASA and every other government agency? Musk's DOGE team. Well, they just talked about that. Did we talk about that? No. Past security breach by teen staffer. And so they essentially doxed this guy, 19-year-old kid, DOGE member, was previously dismissed from a cybersecurity internship for allegedly leaking company secrets. Despite this history, he now holds a position that grants him access to sensitive government information, raising questions about the vetting procedures employed by DOGE. Trump executive order back to plastic. Trump announced his intention to sign an executive order next week aimed at reversing a Biden administration initiative to phase out plastic straws. Pick your poison there. The paper straws, it's been reported, have the forever chemicals lining the inside of them. The plastic straws have bisphenol A in them. So pick your poison there. The paper straws are ridiculous. They dissolve and are wrapped in plastic, and so the whole thing is ridiculous. I'm sure there's some lobbyist or cousin or something that is getting kickbacks from the paper straw scheme. The move described by Trump as bringing back normalcy by returning to plastic straws. And so, yeah, the paper straws are poison. The plastic straws are poison. And neither one of them, both of them pollute our environment. So pick your plastic, paper poison there. Second Amendment news, self-defense news, the most evil thing that America has going for itself, honestly. Gun Owners America tells us that an executive order has been issued by Trump to assess any ongoing infringements of Second Amendment rights of our citizens and present a proposed plan of action to protect the rights of Americans. And so that's pure evil by Trump there. There's the executive order protecting Second Amendment rights. And I was hearing he's going after Second Amendment rights to be his next big move. But if it's good enough for Gun Owners America, it's good enough for me. And so there is that executive order. Okay, continuing here. Trump halts $5 billion EV charging initiative. The National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure NEVI program, which was set to allocate $5 billion for building EV charging stations, across the states. This move has raised concerns about the future of electronic vehicle adoption and has led to discussions on its legality and implications for EV users or owners, particularly in rural and economically disadvantaged areas. Well, as Thomas explained to us, they're not electric vehicles, they're battery-powered vehicles. And so I'm glad he made that distinction, because that's what I'm going to start calling them from now on, because that's what they are. They're battery-powered vehicles, not electric vehicles. And yeah, they throw $1 billion at it, $5 billion in this case. And what did Pete Buttigieg build? I forget the numbers, but just like 5 or something, some ridiculous thing. And so, yeah, it's more fraud, more grift, money laundering, scams by the who you know crowd. And so I'm all for gas powered. I'm all for the breakthrough energy if we can ever get that, as we discussed with Thomas, and we'll just continue to discuss all the where's the water power car, man? All these inventions put on the shelf and taken away from us, advancing from the and oil does pollute the environment badly. And so there's a bunch of other technology sitting there that maybe the government can audit Serco and release some of this clean energy technology to us. And quote, EVs or batteries are not, and they're very dangerous, as we continue to cover. The lithium ion batteries tend to burst into flames and burn very hot. And so no more, but all this stuff, all these executive orders are going to court. I think that's coming up here already, the court challenges. Elon Musk's DOGE proposal, the future of the U.S. penny. Elon Musk, in partnership with the DOGE, has proposed the elimination of the United States penny, citing its production cost over 3 cents per penny, which results in an annual loss of $179 million for taxpayers. This proposal has ignited a debate with various viewpoints. Proponents argue for economic efficiency, suggesting that inflation has diminished the penny's value, and some even advocate for the removal of the nickel. Critics, however, emphasize the penny's cultural significance. We need to keep the freaking coins and the paper money, or they're going to put us all in digital, man. We got to keep all this stuff relevant. Even if it costs, they have to find a more efficient way to produce pennies, is all I could say about that. I don't like it costing 3 cents to produce a penny. That's insane. But we have to keep the coins and the paper money in circulation. That's our only anonymity left. Okay, without going 100% digital and then knowing everything that we transact with here now, except for if you go back to straight barter. So we need to find a way to produce the pennies more efficiently now. And I know that they can if they put their bright Doge minds to it. Trump reacts to our thumbnail, Time magazine cover. Let's watch this from a quick clip from Trump about old Time. For those that didn't see it, let me put it up there as a segue. To the Trump clip. Here's the Time magazine cover, CIA Time, with old Trump sitting there at the resolute desk in the Oval Office as if he is president. And then let's hear this quick clip from Trump talking about it, his response to being asked about it. This Japanese president's just like, these Americans are crazy. Look at this guy.
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to the new Time magazine cover that has Elon Musk sitting behind your Resolute desk?
タイムマガジンにイーロン・マスクが大統領の机の後ろで座っている写真がありますけども、それに関するコメントは何かありますか？
Is Time Magazine still in business? I didn't even know that.
まだタイムマガジンは廃刊じゃないんですか？
That was a good comeback by Trump. Elon Musk's meme sparks debate on taxpayer funding and conflicts of interest. Here's the meme that he posted. But this is true. This is true right here. My tax dollars, somehow also my tax dollars, yet still somehow my tax dollars to gay Hamas terrorists having safe sex. The whole stupid condom. Was it $500 million in condoms to Gaza? But yeah, we're funding both sides of the war. Of all wars, it seems. It is friggin' insane, man. It is insane. HHS cancels. This is very sad news to report, actually. Our Lord and Savior Fauci. HHS cancels 168,000. That's little now, right? Compared to the billions. Fauci exhibit amid efficiency drive. The Department of Health and Human Services has canceled 62 contracts amounting to, I don't know what's up with that headline. Oh, let me read further here. HHS has canceled 62 contracts amounting to $182 million, which were primarily for administrative costs. Among these contracts, a contract worth $168,000 for an exhibit dedicated to Anthony Fauci, our Lord and Savior, at the NIH Museum have been terminated. The move is part of ongoing efforts by HHS to reduce administrative spending without impacting healthcare services. They should all resign and close the doors, and that would solve all that problem. Abolish HHS. As we await to see Senate confirmation for Bobby Kennedy Jr. at that corrupt organization. DOGE team reports $100 billion in Medicare fraud. No surprise there, honestly. So DOGE is now in the Medicare system, and after reviewing the system, DOGE is reporting the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, CMS, they're reporting they've found approximately $100 billion in fraud and waste within these programs. Honestly, I'm surprised it's not a lot bigger than that. They're constantly busting people on the outside. I guess those that don't know the right people, they're constantly busting doctors, healthcare providers for Medicare fraud. There's like stories every week about it. But so 100 billion there, I think we can find a lot more. Honestly, we can find a lot more fraud in CMS. So keep working there, DOGE, on that. Congress members denied entry at the Education Department today, February 7th. Democrat members of Congress, including Maxine Waters, Maxwell Frost, were denied entry into the U.S. Department of Education, sparking a confrontation with security personnel. The incident escalated amid ongoing discussions about access rights to federal buildings and the involvement of Elon Musk with educational data systems. The members of Congress sought to meet with officials, but were turned away, leading to public and media attention on security protocols and political access rights. And I think we have a short video of that. There's a longer one. Here's a short one. Just of them trying to get in. And this, I don't know what's it. I don't know what's up with this guy. Maybe he's a drone, clone, robot.
Excuse me?
Are you prepared to stand here all night if we decide to stay?
I guess, yeah.
All right, well, you just stay right there then. And you just stay and stand.
Why aren't you letting us go to that desk like we were able to do last year?
He's not a U.S. employee.
This is a public institution.
Did Elon Musk hire you? Who do you work for? Who do you
So
work for?
are you not aware of,
Are you even who do you work for?
I'm a federal employee working for the education.
we trying to,
Excuse me?
are you prepared?
Okay, yeah, the halfway point. Thank you. Who's over there helping us? Free T. Thank you. It is the documentary's running on his phone. Thank you very much, sir. And Barry, of course, with your Herculean efforts of all these accounts. And let me do the, we did an hour straight there, commercial free. Let me go to our campaign. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing to our YouTube. The campaign is to become monetized on YouTube for whatever that's worth. We are getting quite a few views on YouTube, surprisingly enough, and no strikes. I mean, I guess they'll just retroactively strike us. But somehow, some way, we have no strikes on YouTube, amazingly enough. But we do self-censor in for to comply with community standards, which they make up whatever, right? So, but anyway, we love YouTube, Google, and all of their tyranny. And their monopoly, actually. So we do need an antitrust investigation into Alphabet, Google, and YouTube for their monopolistic business practices. But besides that, we're trying to get monetized and get a little piece of all of their monopoly money. And so the Weaponized News campaign is to become monetized on YouTube. And we've already reached our threshold of 500 plus subscribers, which was a part of it. And the second part of it is to go ahead and get 3,000 hours viewed. And for transparency's sake, I will go there to show our audience what I'm looking at on my end. We're trying to get 3,000. And you can see here. And again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for helping. We're at 504 subscribers. And this data, as they tell us, lags by 5 days. So as of February 2nd, we had 2,413 hours watched in 365 days. And so we still need 587 hours watched. But again, this data lags by 5 days. So I'm sure we're doing well with all of you wonderful viewers helping us out in the cause here. But let's say we have 140 days left to reach this 3,000 hours viewed in 365-day threshold to become monetized on the YouTube. And I don't think we're going to make it on the shorts because we're long form here. So that's what we need your help. And how you can help us to reach these thresholds is simply go to Weaponized News YouTube channel. For everybody on the other channels, scroll to the bottom and push the documentaries here about the new World Order from the Russian and Chinese perspectives, the new Russian nuclear doctrine, the new U.S. nuclear doctrine, documenting the genocide there in Aardvark land from the UN. We have a BRICS one as well, and a few others as we are documenting the new World Order in the new era here. And if you watched those and got educated up about the subject, then I ask you to simply push play, mute, and walk away. Even easier than listening to all of this education about the new World Order. However you may get your viewing pleasure out of it, help us out to reach these 3,000 hours watch threshold. And it is much appreciated. And thank you to everybody who has participated in this campaign to help us moving forward here at Weaponized News. Free T, Barry, everybody out there knows who's helping, and it's much appreciated. Okay, back to the news. Senate confirms vote, I guess is how you pronounce it, vote, as Director of Office of Management and Budget. And so, Russell Vogt, this guy right here. Let's put his face up there so everybody can know who he is. Russell vote there has been confirmed. And so why aren't they outraged about this guy? He looks like a nerd accountant, like he's going to get things in order. They should be outraged about this guy, right? He's looking pretty serious about his finances. Trump's second term government reduction or fascist strategy. In his second term, President Donald Trump has indicated policies aimed at significantly reducing the size and influence of the federal government. Sounds fascist to me. This move has sparked a debate over its implications, with some viewing it as a reduction of government control, God forbid, while others label these actions as indicative of fascist tendencies, despite historical fascism involving the expansion of government. And they're referencing this Washington Compost article. Trump 2.0, the most damaging first 2 weeks in presidential history. Trump's second term is all about curtailing government power and reach. God forbid. Sounds like pretty fascistic to me. Trump delays tariffs on low-cost Chinese imports. That's actually what we should be tariffing. Probably get all this Chinese plastic shit off the market, man. We're flooded with it. So, yeah, looks like the trade wars, as we know Trump's famous for doing, he throws out some crazy thing and then gets the reaction, and then that's like the starting point of negotiations. And so we're seeing that with the tariff threats to Mexico, Canada, and China here now. And so we can still get our cheap Chinese crap. I know it had people broken up. Let's see what it says here in this report. Trump has signed an executive order temporarily reinstating the de minimis exemption, which previously allowed packages from China valued at under $800 to enter the United States duty-free. This decision was made to give the Department of Commerce time to develop systems for processing these imports and collecting tariffs. The order comes after an initial move to close this exemption, affecting companies like Shine, Temu, and potentially impacting consumer pricing and delivery of goods from China. Trump attempts to remove FEC chair Ellen Weintraub, this woman, lovely woman right here, and she's refusing to go. And so escort her out with security. She does have the wine name, so seems like she should be a team player, but apparently she's not, and she's got to go. Federal Election Commission head there say she won't be fired. No, you got to go. Sorry. And so escort her out with security. Got to go, man. Here's some good story about the old Amish. Why didn't the Amish all die, right? They reject Western Rockefeller medicine. They should all be dead by now, by all accounts, right? But somehow the Amish survived. And they're great volunteers and humanitarians as well. Amish volunteers building bridges in Western North Carolina. And so a group of Amish volunteers from Ohio, coordinated by the Mennonite Disaster Service, constructed 150 temporary bridges and culverts to reconnect residents to their homes following the disaster there in Western North Carolina from the flooding from the Hurricane Helene. This initiative not only demonstrated the Amish community's commitment to service, but also garnered widespread appreciation and calls for greater support for Amish communities. The effort was praised for its effectiveness and the spirit of volunteerism, with many expressing admiration for the Amish's dedication, suggesting that they could serve as a model for disaster response. Well, hell yeah. 3 cheers for the Amish. God forbid, without government, who would build the bridges? I don't know. The Amish. So that is a great story of volunteerism and Mennonite Christian work ethic and support for their community. And so God bless the Amish and their efforts there. And proving once again, we don't need no stinking government, because if you have an organized group of dedicated volunteers with volunteerism in their heart, they can get a hell of a lot more done than a $1 billion funded FEMA, which literally discriminated against people for their political views. And I don't think the Amish are doing so, because they could give a F about your political views. They're just looking to help the common man. So great story about the Amish there. Multi-state lawsuit challenges. This is what I was talking about. All of these executive orders are going to get challenged here now by your Democrats and big government lovers, of course, corrupt pieces of garbage. But multi-state lawsuit challenges Trump's gender-affirming care funding cut. And so, of course, they're eugenicists into mutilation of children, sexual mutilation of children, amongst other crimes against humanity. But Washington State Attorney General Nick Brown, alongside Oregon, Minnesota, filed a lawsuit against an executive order issued by President Trump. This order aims to cut federal funding to institutions providing gender-affirming care for transgender individuals under 19. Concurrently, the U.S. Department of Justice has changed its legal stance, announcing it will no longer oppose Tennessee's law banning such care for minors, but still urges the Supreme Court to decide on the case. All of this is going to go to the Supreme Court at some time in the future. These developments highlight a significant shift in policy and ongoing legal battles regarding transgender healthcare in America. So you could expect everything. I think I saw the stupid, corrupt piece of garbage Attorney General Bonta of freaking California say, come on over here, we'll mutilate your children. And I'm pretty sure California's a child mutilation sanctuary state as well. So very evil here in California, the government, of course. Continuing, Trump targets undocumented. Okay, here's our immigration section. God forbid. Trump targets undocumented immigrants, illegal aliens in Social Security overhaul. And so let's hear, I think we have a clip from Trump. The Trump administration announced its intention to remove undocumented immigrants, illegal aliens, from Social Security and Medicare rolls, claiming they are benefiting from these programs. Yeah, they are benefiting, some of them. As I reported here, I know firsthand in the agriculture sector that they are illegal aliens to work are working on stolen Social Security numbers, ID theft. And so they're in all kinds of scams. So I wouldn't doubt if they are collecting Social Security and getting medical benefits through Medicare as well. I wouldn't doubt it, because they have no problem with identity theft and stealing Americans' Social Security numbers to work. Let's hear now from a quick clip from Trump about this.
Social Security will not be touched. It'll only be strengthened. We have illegal immigrants on Social Security, and we're going to find out who they are and take them out. We have illegal immigrants in other Medicare. We have we found a lot of bad people, a lot of people that shouldn't be on. that were put on through California. A lot of them come out of California. We're not going to stand for that. So we're going to strengthen our Social Security, et cetera. We're not going to touch it other than to make it stronger. But we have people that shouldn't be on, and those people we have to weed out. Most of them, or many of them so far, have been illegal immigrants. They shouldn't even be in the country.
But citizens do it too. You hear about stories. Your old relative, whoever they may be, dies, and they keep collecting the Social Security check. You know what I mean? That happens a lot. President Trump says he is revoking President Biden's security clearance. I think I mentioned that at the beginning, but yeah, shocking, I know. Right? ICE is not getting it done. We need to go protest ICE and say, you guys need to pick up the steam here. They're posting, but they're not even giving us their meme of their daily activities here anymore. The worst of the worst, they say, they're rounding up, which is good. Murderers, rapists, child molesters. That's good. Gang members. That's all well and good, but they're not. We got to pick up the pace here, like a lot. I guess they're getting the worst of the worst first. MS-13 members, part of that criminal gang. But weekly wrap up. Here we go. They just posted this 2 hours ago. Maybe they posted this. I grabbed this. Well, let's see their weekly wrap up video. And what are you going to tell us here about ICE? Still not enough, but let's see. ICE weekly wrap up. I think they posted this since I went to their site. Gang members, larceny, aggravated assault, DUI, assault, murder. That's a pretty big one. Lewd acts, the worst first, they say. Aggravated assault. Child sex abuse. So, I don't know, ICE. It's good you're getting these real bad guys with criminal records, the rapists, murderers, child abusers, child rapers, but we need them all gone, man. They need to pick up pace here. Trump utilizes federal prison for immigration detention. The Trump administration has reinstated the use of federal prisons to detain immigrants, a strategy criticized during his first term for alleged mistreatment. Hey, they still deserve human rights. Don't mistreat them. They just got to go. This policy shift includes facilities in cities like Los Angeles, Miami, Atlanta, although the specifics on the number of detainees and the conditions within these facilities remain undisclosed. And so don't beat them up, rough them up, don't treat them bad, but they got to go and come. If you want to be in America, you got to come in legally. And also missed in this discussion is we need to reform the immigration system as well. DOGE needs to go audit the immigration, U.S. immigration, and clean all of that up and streamline the efficiency of it to get these migrants, people that want to come in America and integrate into America correctly. They need to be able to do so and not have this giant BS red tape and are getting scammed by lawyers out there and whatnot. All that needs to be cleaned up and streamlined to get these people in here legally as well on the other side of it as we clean up them being here illegally. U.S. deploys 1,500 additional troops to the southern border. And so now it's being estimated that approximately 3,600 troops are on the Mexico-U.S. border there. We need more than that, I think. What is it being reported? 10,000 Mexican troops on their side to secure the border. Let's watch this short clip of the troops down there at the border.
And, we like the partnership we have. We think we have a good working relationship.
And so some 3,600 odd U.S. military at the border. We need more than that. DeSantis announces Florida ICE Immigration Enforcement Pact. And so Florida Governor DeSantis has signed an agreement with ICE to allow Florida Highway Patrol officers to perform immigration enforcement duties. This initiative is part of a broader collaboration between state law enforcement and federal immigration authorities aimed to support what has been described as President Trump's plan for the largest deportation program in U.S. history. We're waiting, Trump. We're waiting, ICE. The partnership will involve training and authorization of state troopers to carry out specified immigration officer functions. Sounds good to me. Okay, they're back to California. We're a sanctuary state here. Arrest Newsom. Start with Newsom and every other politician here that's signing off on it. The Federal Communications Commission, back here in California now. We love our illegals here. The Federal Communications Commission has initiated an investigation into KCBS Radio in San Francisco following a broadcast that disclosed the live locations and details of undercover ICE agents during deportation operations. Isn't that treason? The investigation was prompted by concerns over the safety of the agents and the possible legal and ethical violations in broadcasting such sensitive information. FCC Chairman Brandon Carr expressed that the incident is really concerning. And so it's being alleged here now that it came from a George Soros owned radio station, because remember before the election he bought up all these radio stations, and so God forbid the human trafficking gets disrupted by ICE agents. So it's just a short report about it. Pull their broadcasting license.
And his son, whose money is funding a radio station, a series of radio stations that's been accused of broadcasting live locations, by the way, in Colorado, undercover ICE agents, locations of them. Meanwhile, KCBS Radio in San Francisco reportedly told listeners on January 26, get this, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents are currently carrying out an operation on the east side of town. The county's response network says agents in San Jose were in unmarked vehicles. FCC Chair Brendan Carr joins us now. He's running that probe. Concerning to you, Brendan?
Yeah, of course. Look, I try to look on the bright side of things, and here I think that's the fact that we are having an unprecedented number of deportations taking place in this country. And for that, thank goodness for President Trump. Promises made, promises kept. He came in and said he's the person that can not only secure the border, but deport people that are here illegally, and he's carrying that out with unprecedented speed, thanks to Secretary Noem, Tom Homan as well. Here, this is really concerning. So what happened was you had ICE agents undercover doing operations in East San Jose, and part of the town known for violent gang activity, and you had this radio station broadcasting the live location, identifying the unmarked vehicles that they were in, and again, against the backdrop of Democrat leaders in Congress saying it's time for people to take fights to the street against Trump's agenda. So we have sent a letter of inquiry, a formal investigation into that matter, and they have just a matter of days left to respond to that inquiry and explain.
They have taken it to the streets, sir. What does Barry say? I was heavily targeted here. Cops all the time at my house, my protests and my weekly protests. You can also watch them drag me away out of City Hall if you want. Just type in my name plus Oshawa. We will look at that. We'll have to, if the news ever slows down, we'll have to do an episode of Barry getting harassed by the police. That should be entertaining. So they have taken to the streets now here. LA students stage mass walkout over immigration policies. High school students across Southern California, including Venice, Santa Monica, Venice, and San Fernando Valley, have walked out of their schools in protest of President Trump's immigration policies. The protests, which have persisted for several days, focus on opposition to ICE activities and support for immigrant rights. It's not immigrants. They're illegal aliens. These demonstrations have led to significant gatherings in front of notable locations like Los Angeles City Hall. Again, protesting the wrong place. Go protest the federal building. Los Angeles City Hall loves illegal immigration. It's like, are you this stupid? Whoever's directing them, it's like undermining all of their protests. Maybe I should become an illegal alien community organizer and at least direct these people to the right place to protest, for God's sake. Here's video of a man being violently attacked and beaten by a crowd of anti-deportation protesters outside of LA City Hall. And so these are the good people that they're need to stay here. Damn, man, be careful. They're waving Mexican flags too. You'll get jumped and beat the hell out there. Arrest in Bakersfield Park over flag incident. A 24-year-old woman named Crystal Aguilar was arrested in Bakersfield, California after allegedly replacing the American flag with a Mexican flag at a park entrance and reportedly making threats against a police officer. This incident occurred at Hart Memorial Park, where she was confronted by law enforcement. Let's watch. We have this report. Yeah, sorry, this is America, not Mexico.
You're not gonna tell me what to do. This is Mexican land.
Oh, okay.
Look at that flag, because that flag isn't on the floor, is it?
Hey.
Is it?
Hey.
You can't say I'm disrespecting. No, esta es mi tierra. Esta es mi tierra. Esta es mi tierra.
Come here.
Okay, my people kill you.
Turn around.
I'm going in peace and you're hurting me and you're gonna regret it when you okay.
Hey.
Touch me, my when your kids die. When your kids die, you're squishing my hand and they already know. You don't need to take me.
Stop her.
Take me. Take me. Take me.
Take her down.
Take me.
She's on the ground. She's all right. We'll get her.
All this happening this morning around 9:30. The Kern County Sheriff's Office says 24-year-old Crystal Aguilar cut the chain securing the flagpole at the entrance to the park, removed the American flag, threw it into the mud and replaced it with the flag of Mexico. When park rangers attempted to detain Aguilar, she responded with a slew of threats. She was taken into custody and booked into jail on several charges, including threatening a peace officer, vandalism, and resisting arrest.
Yeah, better. That one right there's a real genius, right? The real brain surgeons over here. Yeah, four engineers and a scientist, and that one was a real brain surgeon. You're really gonna talk that shit to the cops? You're crazy, man. Threatening, telling the cops that you're gonna kill their kids. Dude, that's just not smart, man. You could want to kill the cops' kids, but you don't got to tell them that, threaten them like that when they're cuffing you. That's just stupid. But they're geniuses, so they are sending their best, as we see here. And so, piggybacking off of Trump's immigration policies, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has declared that migrants who commit violent crimes will be deported from Poland. God forbid, I know. Why wouldn't you want violent felons in your country? It's horrific and heartbreaking. And so this policy stance was articulated in alongside EU officials amid discussions on EU migration pact with Poland, which Poland has expressed it will not implement in terms of migrant relocation. The announcement comes at a time when Poland is navigating its responsibilities as host to Ukrainian refugees while resisting broader EU migration quotas. No charge for dropping the flag. No. So, old Donald Tusk here is now feeling emboldened by Trump, it appears. And so, yeah, screw you, Poland. Keep your damn felon illegals there. Ishaba? Is that how you pronounce it? Japanese Prime Minister Ishaba met with Trump today at the White House. If you didn't already know, if you couldn't tell from the previous videos, but I like this meeting a lot more than old Bibi meeting. But let's play this short clip and then we'll get to the big announcement about the $1 trillion investment in America from Japan. And so there's their meeting today. And then we have Japan pledges $1 trillion with a T investments in U.S. economy. This announcement was made during a press conference alongside Trump. And so let's watch that announcement. Actually, we have video of it.
Also, with the inauguration of President Trump, the momentum for Japanese companies to invest in the United States is growing even stronger. Today, I conveyed my willingness to cooperate together to elevate Japan's investment in the United States to an unprecedented amount of $1 trillion. President Trump and myself also concurred to elevate the Japan-U.S. partnership to an even higher level through improving business environment and increasing bilateral investment and employment, strengthening each other's industries, leading the world in developing advanced technologies such as AI and leading-edge semiconductors, and strongly promoting efforts to harness the energy of the growing market in the Indo-Pacific.
They need our military to back them up against China. Trudeau on Trump's annexation talk, a serious threat. Today, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau Castro has voiced concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's statements about annexing Canada, suggesting that Trump's intentions could be influenced by Canada's critical minerals. Yeah, I think we've said that on the show. That's why, a big reason why Trump would want that land. Trump's comments were made during a private discussion at Canada-U.S. Economic Summit in Toronto. The remarks have sparked discussions about the seriousness of Trump's intentions, and underlying motivations related to the resource acquisition. I thought he resigned, man. When can we get rid of Trudeau Castro? Remember, it was reported that he resigned, but he keeps hanging around. Leave already, dude. No one likes you. So someday Canada will be rid of that tyrant, Trudeau. Hopefully. This story, I saw someone post about it. Now it's a news story. Sad news for Australia. Australia passes strict hate speech legislation. New hate speech legislation has been officially passed into law in Australia, mandating jail time for public displays of hate symbols like the Nazi salute. This law aims to combat anti-Semitism, but it sparked controversy for potentially infringing on freedom of expression. Critics argue it represents an overreach by the government, fearing it might stifle political dissent and free speech. You think? You think? So what are you in for? Posting a meme critical of the government? Yeah, Australia, friggin', that government is tyrannical. Criminal code. And so they're tracking it there. Horrific. We're passing anti-Semitism hate speech here too. So God forbid you offend an aardvark. That's for sure. Okay. How much more do we have? We got a lot on this Friday edition of Weaponized News. NATO discusses Greenland defense amid Trump tensions. NATO member countries are engaging in informal discussions regarding the potential deployment of troops to Greenland. This follows remarks by Trump about annexing Greenland, a largely autonomous Danish territory. While there are no official deployments confirmed, the discussions highlight tensions within NATO regarding U.S. foreign policy intentions toward Greenland. I thought we're NATO partners. Oh, well. We fund them anyway. Okay. Can we get a peace deal in Russia-Ukraine conflict? War. Zelensky seeks nukes or NATO to end Ukraine conflict. War. Ukrainian unelected President Zelensky has publicly demanded nuclear weapons or NATO membership as a condition for ending the war with Russia. This request follows Ukraine's historical disarmament in the 1990s, which is tied to security assurances that some argue were broken by Russia's invasion. Zelensky demands reflect Ukraine's ongoing security concerns, but have sparked debate over the implications for global stability, including fears of escalation toward a third world war. Do we trust Zelensky with nukes? I don't think so. Continuing. Here's a flashback. Remember when Biden bragged about withholding $1 billion in aid until Ukraine fired the prosecutor investigating Burisma? Let's watch this this famous clip with Biden speaking at the Council on Foreign Relations.
They made, I mean, I'll give you one concrete example. I was, not but it just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, there's still, they made some genuine, substantial changes institutionally and with people. But in one of the three institutions, there's now some backsliding. The courts are there, and yes, and they had made that commitment that they wouldn't do that. And so when we left, the first thing I spent.
So, yeah, there you go. Remember all that? Funded by USAID. Trump continues to admit Ukraine is about securing rare earth minerals. Let's watch this.
One of the things we're looking at with President Zelensky is having the security of their assets. They have assets underground, rare earth and other things, but primarily rare earth. And we want to have security. Really, we want security because, as you know, Europe is putting up much less money than us. NATO, Europe, call it whatever you want. And we're at probably 300 billion plus, and they're at probably, the real number is 100 billion. That's a lot of money, but it's 200 billion less than us, and there's an ocean in between. And they need it more than us, so we're asking them to equalize and get even. But we're also asking President Zelensky for the security of, we're putting all this money up, and we're saying, where does it stop? And yet, we want to see it out to an end. We want to see it end.
Yeah, let's see it end. We're almost at the end of this. All this news. On the Aardvark news, Trump says he is in no rush on Gaza. Aardvark Post tells us here. See, now they're even calling it the redevelopment. It's a real estate redevelopment plan. Has always been the plan. There. Here's a funny video. A protester there in Washington, D.C. Throws an egg at the Bibi motorcade. Yeah, I'd be careful doing that. They'll book you on an act of terrorism. Here's a flashback, another flashback of little Marco, our now Secretary of State, when him and Trump were debating in the 2016 Republican primaries. He says the Palestinians are not a real estate deal, Donald. Really? Nobody let little Marco, senator then, in on the program, apparently.
In all fairness, Marco is not a negotiator. I watched him melt down, and I'll tell you, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. He's not going down.
He thinks the Palestinian is a real estate deal.
And these people may even be tougher than Chris Christie, okay?
The Palestinians are not a real estate deal, Donald.
Okay, no. A deal,
They're not a real estate deal.
Is a deal. Let me tell you,
a deal is not a deal when you're dealing with terrorists. Have you ever negotiated with terrorists?
You are not a negotiator. And with your thinking, you will never bring peace. You will never bring peace.
Donald might be able to build condos in the Palestinian areas, but he's not going to. This is not a real estate deal.
Senator, he will never be able to do it. I think I may be able to do it, although I will say this. Probably the toughest deal of any kind is that particular deal.
And now he's Secretary of State. Hey, bioterrorism attack? That's a good point, better. Book them as bioterrorists, potentially. They're throwing that egg. Very good point. Here is Trump confirms his views on the Gaza takeover plan. Real estate transaction, real estate redevelopment program. Let's watch this short clip.
Are there deliberations on Gaza, sir? The timetable for a takeover?
No deliberations. It's been very well received, where basically the United States would view it as a real estate transaction where we'll be an investor in that part of the world. And no rush to do anything. We wouldn't need anybody there. It would be supplied and given to us by Israel. They'll watch it in terms of security. We're not talking about boots in the ground or anything, but I think the fact that we're there, that we have an investment there, I think would go a long way to creating peace. We don't want to see everybody move back and then move out in 10 years. This has been going on for 50 years, much more than that. We just want to see stability. That would be having us have that particular piece in that particular location, I think would show great stability and would lead to great stability in the area for very little money, very little price, and we wouldn't need soldiers at all. That would be taken care of by others. And the investments are taken care of by others also. So for no investment, I mean virtually no investment whatsoever, it would bring stability to the area, and others can invest in it later on. But we're in no rush on it. It's absolutely no rush.
Here's old Gallant, and then we have a clip about it. Former Aardvark Defense Minister Gallant admits Aardvarks instructed orders with the Hannibal doctrine to kill many of their own citizens on October 7th. We gave orders to the army to use the Hannibal procedure, i.e., to kill prisoners with their captors.
ניתנה הוראה לנוהל חניבל? אני חושב שבאופן טקטי במקומות שונים ניתנה, ובמקומות אחרים לא ניתנה, וזו בעיה. ניתנה הוראה לנוהל חניבל? אני חושב שבאופן טקטי במקומות...
It was tactically given the order, as we reported at the time, triple confirming it. Do we even play this to play us out? How much more do we got? Oh, the big arms deal today. Yeah, let's play it. What the heck? Hannibal Directive. Let's watch this. What is it? It's not that long. 2-minute, 37-second video about the Hannibal Directive of the Aardvarks.
Apache helicopter gunships fired onto cars driving towards Gaza, aware that some of them were carrying captives.
אני באוויר, באחת הגיחות נאמר כבר שיש חטופים.
ואז מה עושים? איך מבצעים ירי על מי שחוזר לכיוון הגבול?
זו שאלה טובה, וזו דילמה סופר מורכבת.
כל ההחלטה עכשיו היא עליך.
נכון.
אין עם מי לדבר.
כן, אין עם מי לדבר.
Without guidance, some pilots said they joined local WhatsApp groups to help pick targets.
The idea that pilots have to get information from WhatsApp groups is truly remarkable. It's a sign of the initiative that people are looking for any way that they can get the information. This is an outrage. I mean, what kind of a way is that to fight a modern war?
At least 70 vehicles were hit by attack helicopters.
To me, it's inexcusable for a helicopter or any weapon system to be engaging any target if you don't know what that target is. Now, my concern is, with this footage, we cannot tell whether they're Hamas gunmen or civilians or possibly hostages. And I don't believe the helicopter pilot or the machine gun operator would be able to tell either.
These big rounds have a certain area effect and obviously come at a certain rate that if you shoot at a group of people, you're most likely going to kill everyone. You are knowingly putting your own civilians at risk.
The I unit compiled a detailed list of those killed on October 7. It found that 27 captives died somewhere between their homes and the Gaza fence. The circumstances of those deaths have not been explained. 12 more civilian deaths took place in Be'eri kibbutz after an attack by police and army forces on a house there containing captives. Israel's Channel 12 spoke to survivors.
והם הביאו פתאום טנק, אני אומרת לאחד החיילים, תגיד, אבל אם אתם יורים פגזים זה לא יפגע בבני ערובה? אז הוא אומר לי, לא, אנחנו רק עושים את זה בצדדים, להוריד קירות. הם נהרגו מרסיסים, הם לא נהרגו כי רצחו אותם, הם נהרגו מהירי. היה שם ירי מטורף על הבית, מטורף. טנק הגיע וירה בפגזים. אז היה. אם זה קרה, זה היה, אם הם מתו כל הבני ערובה, זה רק מהירי.
The investigative unit asked the Israeli army for comment on its actions on October 7. They did not reply.
Indeed, better. The first 15-minute city there, experiment. There you go. Okay, State Department lays out plans for $7 billion plus, $7.4 billion plus arms sale to Aardvarks as Bibi visits D.C. The AP tells us here. U.S. plans $7.4 billion arms sale to Aardvarks. On Friday, the Pentagon said the State Department has approved a package worth an estimated $6.7, and then they get into the detail, also detailing in the deal an estimated $660 million of Hellfire missiles. And so the Pentagon shouldn't feel that bad about an audit, right? Because they're doing okay. The munition makers are doing okay. You can see right there, they just got another fat deal. $7.4 billion arms deal to Aardvarks to continue the genocide. And so, indeed, the real estate redevelopment plan of the greater Aardvark land is continuing as planned. The package includes munitions, guidance kits, missiles. So they're not done killing people, even by a long shot. And but it's a ceasefire, so hey. That's all we got for you. Aardvarks just sold. Yeah, we reported on that better. They did. So arms trafficking as well as part of this. Indeed, they did. They just sold 90 missiles to Ukraine. Yeah, indeed. Okay, that's all we got. I think I covered a hell of a lot, and there is a hell of a lot to cover in a little under 2 hours there. Let me go to the channel. And then, by the way, the wrap up, the closeout is a long one. And so those interested in a lot of the conspiracy here now will enjoy, as I did, this Dr. John Coleman lecture on the Club of Rome, Chatham House, and the Committee of 300. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Good stuff. So that will be our long play out here. For those interested, stick around for that. But let me go to the channels here now as I close out my broadcast, live broadcast here. Let's go to the old Rumble. Thank you guys for tuning in on the Rumble. Who do we got here? MG, always so generous. Thank you. Prayers for Simon, indeed. Indeed, prayers for Simon that he can recover from his life-changing medical event. Karen says, yeah, happy Friday, Karen. Thank you for joining us. Gunther, kill for peace. Kill for peace. If you kill everybody and everybody's dead, then we'll have peace because there'll be no one left to fight. Ruckus over there on multiple platforms. Thank you, gentlemen, and Barry. Thank you, Gunther. Let's see, what do we got? I've been working most of the day on a special set of graphics for my next episode. Well, let us know and we'll try to help co-promote it here, Ruckus, to try to get some more eyes on your programs. MG there. Thank you for tuning in. What does MG say? I'm giving my email out in a live stream chat. Oh, can I PM you on these guys are chatting amongst themselves. I appreciate that. No, he said he's not giving it out in a live stream chat. Yeah, private message. If you don't want your email out there in a live stream chat, that's smart. That's just reading some of the chat here, seeing if I can pull out anything of any substance. But I do appreciate you guys chatting it up, and that's very good that you guys are friends there. And I don't see any trolls. We had a few trolls there like a week ago or something. They just came on here screaming, "It's the Aardvarks," right? It's like, yeah, we know that's part of it. That is indeed part of it. Yeah, MG, the Rumble rants, Rumble raves or rants, whatever they call it. Thank you for the $20 again, MG. Much appreciated there. Let's see. Yeah, Carrie. She said she told Simon to heal his soul was drained from all the hard work. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you look at news all day as much as he was, he said he was on it for like 18 hours a day for like a long time, like a year or probably even more than that. I don't know. It gets draining on you, man. Seeing all this, seeing all the death, destruction, and evil, it gets freaking draining on your soul. That's for sure, man. John, shout out to you there, John. Shout out to Lancaster County, yeah, where John's at. Thank you guys for the Rumble chat, everybody, and keeping that chat very lively. And seems like, yeah, Very cordial over there. The old Rockfin channel. John on the Rockfin. Gene. Most propagandized society in human history. Yeah, probably. We probably are, Gene. Most high tech. I mean, we have the most communications, the most high tech. Yeah, the social engineers know what they're doing. 100%. We are the most propagandized society in human history. I would have to agree with you there, Gene. John says, I'm convinced that the events we see today were planned as long ago as a century. I entertain the thought that Trump losing in 2020 selection was part of a greater plan, the excesses of the Biden administration. May very well be, John. They may know that we are in the Great Reset, right? They know that, and they stole as much as they possibly could. So I would have to agree with you there. And think of it. They were saying, we're not taking the Trump miracle, all the Democrats, right? Because it's from Trump. And then as soon as you got Biden in there, they all loved the miracle and they all took it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Very, very possibly, I'd say highly likely, it is all part of the selection plans. I don't know how you base your health decisions on politics, but large majorities of the American public did. And so, indeed, John, that's a very astute observation, and I would have to agree with you on that. You guys had quite a good chat going there on the Rockfin. Thank you for tuning in on the Rockfin. As I say every broadcast, thank you for the BitChute listeners, watchers, but there's no live chat, man. And so email BitChute and tell them integrate some type of live chat feature so we could get a shout out and be part of the conversation there on the BitChute. Thank you for tuning in on the BitChute. The Facebook. Oh, by the way, Barry, Facebook messaged me because I forget even which broadcast, but you're like, Facebook just cut you off. And I was like, what? Why would they do that? And they literally flagged me. It was like, Facebook has no respect for fair use whatsoever. Everything you post, they flag. Somebody has a copyright claim on it. And everything I do, as you can see, is 100% fair use. But anyway, it was like, it wasn't even an intro. It wasn't even music. It was like music from like in the background of some clip I played. And they're like some big music conglomerate that claims copyright and everything. And it's like BMI or something. That's what they blocked the broadcast, saying that they own the friggin' copyright on it. It's ridiculous. So anyway, that was why that stream that got cut off of Facebook. That's why it happened. One of these big conglomerates not respecting fair use on the Facebook. But thank you to everybody for tuning in on the Facebook. It is appreciated, and the X and the YouTube. And thank you, gentlemen, in the chat there that I can see over here. Much appreciated. Facebook is wall-to-wall Karens. some human, most not. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Ruckus, let me know when you get your show together, and I'll help you try to promote it as best I can through my censorship, shadow banning, throttling, all this nonsense. We'll still repost it for you and try to get it out there. Yeah, it is pretty fake and gay. I agree. Okay. As always, everybody do your own research. Peace, love, and liberty. Speak out and take action. And have a wonderful Super Bowl weekend here now. And I'll see you back here on Monday. And hopefully, I'm going to talk to Thomas. I'm going to sort out the schedule. And hopefully we can nail it down to where we have regular times nailed down. I'll still be back at 5 p.m. Pacific time. but I need to nail down the schedule with Thomas. He had suggested twice a week he would appear, and he's going to help co-produce and round up some guests for us to have once this news dies down. I mean, you saw me, I didn't give that much extra commentary, and I blasted through a good, I'd say if you said me just reading the news is an hour and a half, man, it's and then throw in 20 minutes of side commentary or something like this. But the news is just overwhelming, and we barely even scratched the surface, right? But I think I tried to cover the most significant stories of the day here for us in the United States as we try to reduce the size of government, and then also be skeptical and not shills for Trump or Musk, and be skeptical about what they're doing. I think it's a conflict of interest for Musk to be auditing the Pentagon, honestly. We're going to have to see how it sorts out. But again, abolish all these federal agencies. But Congress needs to be held accountable here now, somehow, some way. Maybe, like I said, if they truly release the Epstein files and a bunch of Congress is caught up in it, they'll all resign, but then they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law for their involvement in sex trafficking and all of the corruption that they've allowed to go on here now. And we're just scratching the surface with USAID. So everyone have a great Friday evening and rest of your weekend. As always, do your own research, peace, love, and liberty. Speak out and take action. And here is the aforementioned John Coleman lecture, the Club of Rome, Chatham House, and the Committee of 300. I think it's well worth the listen. And I'll see everybody back here on Monday. Have a great Super Bowl weekend.
I just want to give you a brief introduction to Dr. Coleman. I've been studying this for a long time and seeing what's happened to our country, and you know, it's kind of sad in this country that you have to come to a meeting on Saturday morning to get the truth. You can't turn on the television because you sure don't get the truth there. So we sure appreciate everybody coming out, but in order to do that, I ran across Dr. Coleman's work. And when you've studied this and looked for the truth, and it's a pleasure to find somebody like Dr. Coleman that'll bring you to a new level of what the real truth, who's really behind what's going on in this country. None of this is an accident. This is orchestrated. This has been planned and plotted and is moving right along. And if the only thing that you can do is be informed and learn what's going on, who's really behind it. And nobody does that better than Dr. Coleman. He's an author of 3 books. He has a table back here. I recommend that you look through his material. It'll bring you to a new level of information as to what's going on in the country as well as the world. And this is the only country left that stands between the country as we know it, or the world as we know it, and the New World Order, which will drastically change everybody's lives, as Dr. Coleman will tell you. But the big difference between Dr. Coleman and some of the other speakers is he's been in most of the places that we're talking about. He's been in Lebanon, Brazil, France, Italy, Spain, England, South Africa, and all over the U.S. And he did this, in his work. He has firsthand experience with most of the things that are going on here. He studied 5 years in the British Museum in London, also in the Cain Museum in Egypt, where he did research on the Black Plague. And, if you study his work or read his work on AIDS, I think it'll shock most of you. In his investigation, through the congressional records. And the congressional records is where most information is in this country. And he would feel very comfortable, in debating the Supreme Court justice on the Constitution at any time. Because our Constitution is basically being walked all over at this time. But at this time, I'd like to bring on Dr. Coleman, and let's give a big hand to him, and we appreciate him.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that great welcome. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be among you here this morning. Looking at all these big fellows around the place, I feel a little small in stature, but I would remind you what Wellington told the German General Blücher at Waterloo when he rode up to inspect Wellington's troops. He saw the Scotch and the Irish Guards on the hillside. He rode through them and he turned to Wellington and said, "They're rather small, aren't they?" And Wellington said, "Yes, but they don't run away." Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you a message of hope, not fear. A message that I hope will galvanize us all into much needed action. The problem is quite simple. Anarchy and chaos prevails in Washington, D.C. because the federal government has seized powers to which it is not entitled to and is passing masses of laws that are 100% unconstitutional. And when you get men setting themselves up as greater than the Constitution of the United States, you get anarchy and eventually tyranny. Now, I'm paranoid. I'm going to admit to you right up front. But let me tell you what the real meaning of the word paranoid is. It is a man or a person who has the ability to link events that seemingly are not connected. That is the true meaning of paranoia, or being paranoid. Of course, it's been used by our enemies, the socialists, the Marxists, the liberals, the so-called progressives, to smear us. How many times haven't I heard it said of me, "That fellow's paranoid"? Yes, I'm glad to admit it, because I have the ability to connect events that are seemingly unconnected. And when you do that, you begin to arrive at the truth. It's taken me 25 years to come to the conclusions that I have come to. And I want to tell you that one of the biggest things I discovered in my work was the existence of a supranational committee composed of 300 men. I came across this quite by accident when I was serving in Africa, in Angola, and I was given a series of documents which were only supposed to be handed in to top-level people. They were what we called above the top level of classification of intelligence documents. And there I discovered that whilst I thought I was in Africa fighting against the invasion of the communists, I was in fact fighting to introduce socialist regimes in the black African countries, and that I was actually working for a committee called the Committee of 300, also known in intelligence circles as the Olympians. I'll stop right there, and I want to digress for a moment and tell you the word intelligence has been bandied around a great deal in the United States. I've seen people writing this and that and the other intelligence newsletter. They really have no experience whatsoever. In 1986, I wrote a work called Mind Control, Metaphysics, Extremely Low Frequency Radiation, and Weather Modifications. And in that work, July the 8th, 1986, I said that the top-level intelligence organization in the United States was the National Reconnaissance Office, far bigger than the CIA and any of the other intelligence agencies. And by the way, we have about 10 different ones in the United States. And I even had the audacity to give the address of this organization. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Sam Donaldson, the gentleman who wears that beautiful toupee so effectively, he came on with a program in prime time, and he said, "This is one of the biggest scoops that ABC has ever had. And he told about the National Reconnaissance Organization. The exact same thing that I published 8 years earlier. I tell you this to set the stage so that you'll understand I do have some experience and that I know that of which I speak. You know, the American people are somewhat like the Irish. I'm sure you've heard the story of the Irishman who got shipwrecked, and after many days he was washed up on an island, and as he staggered along the beach, some people came out of the trees waving spears, and he said to them, "Is there a government here?" And they said, "Yes." He said, "Well, then I'm against it." Liberty is based on individual freedom. We are individual people. We are not the mass, so disdainfully referred to by Karl Marx and the socialist writers. We objected to a tax of a penny a pound on tea when King George of the Venetian Party of the North, now that's probably the first time you've heard that expression. It took me 5 years of digging in the British Museum in London, which I consider to be the finest repository of knowledge in the world, to come up with that name. That was what the party of King George was called, and we'll come to the reason for that. But our colonists said, we're not going to pay this penny a pound on tea. Today, we are being driven on our knees by a tyrannical government, which is imposing all sorts of taxes upon us, and worse than that, trammeling on and tramping on the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the second greatest document in the world next to the Bible. And if we could rebel against the mighty powers of King George III, the most potent force in the world at that time, then, ladies and gentlemen, it is time that we rebelled against a federal government that is trammeling the Constitution underfoot every day of the week. King George III of the Venetian Party of the North did more than that. He sent Adam Smith, a servant of the British East India Company, to formulate a policy which he called free trade. And by the means of free trade, Adam Smith, a greatly beloved economist of the Marxist, the socialist, and the liberals, hoped to bring the small manufactories and the industries established by the colonists to their knees. Let me tell you unequivocally that free trade is piracy. There is no such thing as free trade. We have to reject this constant brainwashing to which we are subjected. Free trade began with Adam Smith and the British East India Company. Now, who is the British East India Company? They played a massive role in the history of the United States of America. Only you are not taught this in your schools or in your universities, but you need to know. In my book, The Committee of 300, which took 20 years of research, and incidentally, I was only a little bit behind with Karl Marx. He spent 30 years in the British Museum in London, where he got most of his things from. I point out that the British East India Company was the most powerful trading company in the world. They made their massive monies out of the dope trade. They first grew prime poppies in Kew Gardens in Kensington, London, got the best producing opium poppies. They then shipped them to Benares in India, where they began a massive plantation of poppies, opium producing poppies. They then used their famous tea clippers to transport the poppies in the form of raw opium to China. And by their military force, they imposed an opium policy on China that turned the Chinese nation into a nation of addicts. And they enforced this policy, which was known to the royal family and Lord Gladstone, the Prime Minister, and every one of the lords and ladies in England. And they made a massive, huge fortune. In researching these documents in India House in London, I came across some of the manifests of the old tea clippers and the numbers of kegs of opium they carried and the values. And I totaled up these things, and I found to my astonishment that if we took 1970 as an optimum year for profits in General Motors and Ford, in 1 year, the opium trade with China was 3 times the profits of the combined profits of Ford and General Motors in 1970. And this was shared by 300 people. That was the committee that ran the British East India Company. They all had equal voting rights. They could not outvote each other, and of course they were sworn to secrecy. The descendants of the British East India Company today run the United States. And I will hope to prove my thesis as we go along. They also interfered in the development of the United States on every occasion. They armed the Indians, they armed the people against the settlers who were pushing west. They ran the Hudson's Bay Company. They also ran so-called mission stations in China and got these missionaries who were really not missionaries at all to push opium on the Chinese. And I remember a conversation with the late Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Prime Minister of Egypt, President of Egypt, and Mohammed Aikel, one of the top journalists, with Chow En-lai. And Chow En-lai told him, he said, you know, the Americans and the British made China a nation of opium addicts, and now with the Vietnam War, it's our turn. We are going to make the Americans a nation of opium addicts. So you can see the influence, the evil, baleful influence of the British East India Company upon the great nation of the United States of America. They were the ones who financed the war. They put up the money for the British troops to buy the Hessian mercenaries and to fight the colonists. Those brave 3%, let me remind you that only 3% of the people took arms and stood up against the mighty army of King George III. We are 3% here this morning, but that's enough for us to withstand the mighty force of the federal government of the United States of America. These 300 men in the Committee of 300 still run the world today with an iron fist. Their wealth is untold, cannot be measured. I know I looked at some of the records that I could find in Italy, in Rome. I've done most of my work on location, and this has always been invaluable to me. And I came across the families in Italy who were called the fondi, meaning the people who had all the money. They were all members of the Committee of 300, the Lucatis, the Recanatis, the Volpi du Miseratis. These people are so wealthy that they would make David Rockefeller look like a piker. That is how rich they are. And this is the committee that runs the world. Now, in my book, The Committee of 300, I name every one of them. This is not a book that talks about they. It gives you specifics. And I must say I do the same thing in my new book, Socialism, The Road to Slavery, which was 10 years in researching. On July the 4th, 1789, George Washington told the Congress, it is necessary for us to impose tariffs to protect the manufactories of our colonies. That was the first trade barrier. Now, let us dispose for once and for all with the words that have been implanted on our minds, like isolationist, and you are for restricted trade, and you are against global trade. The United States of America did not grow great on global trade. The United States of America grew great on the hard labor of the people who lived in those days and the wise protection barriers put up by President George Washington, because immediately after the war they tried, the British, to try to down the United States through so-called free trade, which is nothing but piracy. Free trade, ladies and gentlemen, is a one-way street which allows other countries to dump their products on our markets to the detriment of our own people. That's what free trade is. It's strictly a one-way street. The trade barriers were increased by Lincoln, Garfield, and McKinley, and all three presidents paid with their lives for that policy. Disraeli was particularly incensed with Lincoln. Disraeli was the British Prime Minister at the time, and he ordered British MI6 to assassinate Lincoln, which is what they did, the same way as British MI6 publicly executed President John F. Kennedy at a later time. Our founding fathers and our presidents saw the value of trade barriers. They realized that we, if we wanted to progress, were not to be the dumping ground of the world. And I'm going to leave that subject for now and return to it later. The format that I want to use this morning is the type of questions that are most often asked of me. I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people across the United States and worldwide, and I've been on many, many radio shows, and these type of questions, we note them, and this is what comes up most of all. Who and what is the Committee of 300? Well, I've dealt with that. I've told you this is a supranational body that knows no boundaries, respects the laws of no countries. The first time that they were publicly announced was by a German socialist by the name of Walter Rathenau. Now, I'll give you some background of Walter Rathenau. He was the financial advisor to the Kaiser of Germany, and he was also the financial advisor to the Rothschilds, the French family Rothschild. So he must have known what he's talking about. He made an astonishing statement in 1934. He said, there is a committee of 300 men that rule the world. They are known only to each other, and nothing happens without their consent. When former head of state Mikhail Gorbachev visited the United States a few years ago, flanked by George Bush and Quayle, he opened his Gorbachev Foundation in the United States. And he let slip, he said, this is being done with approval of the Committee of 300. CNN cameras were on him. They immediately switched. Now, I wrote to CNN and I said, could I have a transcript of this program, which they said was available. I never got a reply. I followed it up with letter after letter, but nothing ever came of it. The point I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that the federal government, the secret upper-level parallel government that runs the United States, does not want you to know that you have an upper-level parallel government that calls the shots, that dictates what is going to happen to your life and mine. So that's how I found out about the Committee of 300. The next question is, what are their goals? Their goals are a one-world government, latterly called the New World Order. The one-world government began with King George III. At the time that the colonists were brave enough to take him on, King George was already busy formulating a one-world government, and he had lined up at least 50 countries that were willing to come into this future world dictatorship with him. The goals then, very simply stated, are to make the world over into a one-world, new world order dictatorship controlled utterly and completely by this Committee of 300. How can they possibly carry out their goals? That's the next question that I'm often asked. They do it by dint and by virtue of their fantastic wealth and the fact that they control thousands of the top banking institutions, the political organizations, insurance companies. In fact, one of the giant insurance companies, a man called me and said, do you mean to tell me that they are controlling the Metropolitan of New York? I said, the Metropolitan of New York is peanuts. He said, how can you say that? That's a giant American company. I said, well, compared with the Assicurenzi de Generali de Venezia, it's peanuts. That's the biggest insurance company in the world. They control in that organization everything that happens in the world in the insurance field comes out of Venice. That's why Venice is so important because in Venice we have the black nobility. Now that has nothing to do with the color of the skin of the people, and I'm going to come back to them as we go along. So the goals are a one-world dictatorship of the most brutal kind, and how they carry it out is they have these interface banks, insurance companies, mining conglomerates, every conceivable control in politics, including the Democrat Party of the United States, which is, of course, since 1980 behind closed doors at a secret caucus in Washington, D.C. The Democrat hierarchy took on the goals of the old Socialist Party USA, i.e. based upon the Communist Manifesto of 1848. If you have a copy of my book, and I'm not pushing it, but in my book, The Committee of 300, I list every one of their huge, gigantic corporations, how they interface. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is an eye-opener because it gets right down to the nitty-gritty of your everyday life in the cities and towns across the United States. So they carry out their goals through existing organizations. And also, of course, they have built up some special organizations of their own. When I first started writing in America, when I came here in 1969, I revealed the existence of an organization called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which is located at Chatham House in 10 St. James Square in London. I also revealed the existence of the Club of Rome, the Cini Foundation, the Mont Pelerin Society, the Order of St. John, which was known but not known. And I listed all of these secret societies that run the world as executive arms of the Committee of 300. So it controls the world through all of these. The Royal Institute for International Affairs is the executive arm of this committee, which gives instructions to the United States government to this very day. The chain of command is as follows. Every Secretary of State that has been appointed since 1919 is appointed by the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That may come as a shock for you. You think you vote and you put a conservative in the White House, and then he appoints supposedly or allegedly conservative people to carry out the policies that you wanted him to implement. Surprise, surprise. I ask you to find me a conservative Secretary of State since 1919. And if you search diligently and apply the correct rules, you will come up blank. Every one of the Secretaries of State was chosen in London by the Secretary of State, as was Wilson, the President Wilson, as was Roosevelt, as was James Earl Carter. He was specially chosen because he'd had 3 mental breakdowns, and they felt he would be a good guy to manipulate. Oh, I'm talking facts. I'll tell you the story of that. In my World in Review news magazine, I wrote that, James, I'm digressing a bit here, but it's necessary to do that now and then. It's not a sign of a bad speaker, although I don't put any laurels around my own neck. But James Earl Carter was not a known entity in the American scene. I first heard of him through my intelligence contacts, particularly my French sources, who were one of the best in the world after MI6, and he told me, your next president is going to be a peanut farmer from Georgia. And I said, how come? He said, right now they're meeting at the Dorchester Hotel in London. And if you get your fanny over there, he said, you'll find that there's a lot of goings on you might like to look at. And lo and behold, that's what was happening. The Royal Institute for International Affairs had ordered David Rockefeller to find a candidate who was totally weak, preferably a little mentally weak. And they put one of the greatest brainwashing specialists in the world, trained by the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations, Dr. Peter Bourne, on the job. And he said, it's funny you should say that. One of my patients is a guy from Georgia, James Earl Carter, and this guy can't take rejection, and he's been to me 3 times for a nervous breakdown. So they hiked Carter over to London and feted him at the Dorchester Hotel, which is a very ritzy place. And they feted him and wined and dined him. And the next thing we saw, Time, Newsweek, every newspaper in the country, James Earl Carter. Now we, in our little magazine, World in Review, we told those of our subscribers, this man is your next president. We also did exactly the same thing with William Jefferson Clinton. because we had the story of the Club of Rome. We knew who Agnelli was. We knew that Agnelli had had a huge love affair with Mrs. Pamela Harriman, and that Mrs. Pamela Harriman was the doyen of the Democrat Party, and Mrs. Harriman had been given the task of finding the next president of the United States, a socialist. And she picked up Clinton and said, "You're our boy." But there's one snag. Clinton went up there brushing his forelock back, said, "Well, you know, there's one problem. My wife's left me." So Mrs. Harriman was dumbfounded. She said, "Well, you better give it back in a hurry." And he said, "No, she doesn't want to come back to me because of my tryst with other women." That's how he put it. My philanderings would have been a better word, but he said tryst with other women. So Mrs. Harriman sent for Mrs. Clinton, and she duly came to New York, and she sat her down and said, "Look, if you want to be the first lady of America with all the attendant prestige and power, you better forget about your husband's philanderings and get right back to him." And that is precisely what happened. And when I heard that had happened, I knew this guy was the next president. And we wrote that in our news magazine. And sure enough, a year later, here came marching into the scene William Jefferson Clinton. So the RIA, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, does control everything that happens in the United States. They give their orders to the Morgan Guarantee and Trust Bank on Wall Street. And the chief executive officer of that organization is Dennis Weatherstone. And he duly relays the orders over to the Secretary of State, whoever that happens to be. And he then relays the orders to the President. There was one exception to this, and that was during the illegal, 100% unconstitutional Gulf War. Now, I'm going to use a word, and I apologize to the ladies for this, but I need to tell you this graphically to illustrate the power that the Royal Institute for International Affairs exercises over the affairs of the United States of America. When George Bush was hesitating and didn't know whether he should get into the Gulf or not, the Prime Minister of Britain, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, came over to the Committee of 300's headquarters at the Aspen Institute, Colorado, and this is the phone call that she had with George Bush. She said, "George, this is Margaret. Apologies to you, ladies president. Get your ass up here. I've got some orders for you about the Gulf War." And Bush went scurrying up there like a little messenger boy. And the next thing we know, there was this massive outpouring of propaganda to start a war against the nation of Iran, a nation that had never done this country one iota of harm. I use those illustrations in order to give you the extent of the control that is exercised by this Committee of 300. There are many other societies that are operating for the RIIA. The Illuminati, which has been around for many, many years. I've written a work called The Illuminati in America, 1784 to 1994. A lot of people think this is an ancient secret society that's gone away. They think that Adam Weishaupt had a quarrel with the Catholic Church and that's it. Don't you believe it? 13 of the top families in the United States are in the Illuminati today, and they have a big say on everything that happens politically in this country. Then we have the Society of Cincinnati, which I don't think many of you will have heard about. That is an ultra secret society to which every president of the United States is forced to belong, including our so-called conservative presidents. And I point this out to you to show you that it doesn't matter who is in the White House. This Committee of 300, through the Royal Institute for International Affairs, through the Council on Foreign Relations, exercises complete control. But their strongest arm is called the Club of Rome. Now, when I first heard of the Club of Rome in 1969, I immediately began my investigation. And as Ken told you, all of my investigations have been done on location. Every one of them. The Club of Rome is one of the most insidious, baneful organizations in existence today, which has done intolerable, immeasurable harm to the United States of America. This Committee of 300 told a man called Aurelio Pecci to form this Club of Rome with the main object of bringing down the industries and the agricultural development of the United States. He immediately wrote a paper in which he said there are too many people on the earth and that the United States, with its industrial development, its agricultural development, is responsible for this curse of overpopulation. And he picked up the documentation for his work from Lord Bertrand Russell, a senior statesman of the Committee of 300. And Lord Bertrand Russell had written a work called The Impact of Science on Society. And if you can ever secure a copy of that book, which I doubt you'll be able to get, you will see in there that he said the world is grossly overpopulated and we have to get rid of at least half of the world's population, and it doesn't matter how we do it. So the Club of Rome was instituted and organized to start an attack on the world's population using the United States as the whipping boy. And they came up with a paper called the Zero Growth Post-Industrial Plan for Industry and Agriculture for the United States of America. 3 days after that plan was accepted as official United States policy by James Earl Carter, I was able to, through my intelligence people, get a copy of this insidious document. Basically what it said was that the middle class in the United States of America had to be destroyed because in the coming push to a world order, the middle class would be the stumbling block because history had shown that the peasant class in ancient days, when they had revolted, were just easily crushed. There was no resistance. But now had grown a new super class of people in the United States called the middle class, who had long-term employment, who had job security, who were well paid, who could afford to buy the products that were made by the United States and didn't need to buy products from China or anywhere else. And the Club of Rome post-industrial zero growth paper said this has got to stop. We have to bring down the middle class of the United States. And the way that we will do this, the way that we will accomplish this task is by crushing their industries. In 1980, based on this report, I wrote a small work, a booklet called The Death of the United States Steel Industry. And in that I told of a French aristocrat by the name of Etienne Davignon. And I'm sure there's not a single steel worker in America out of a job who's ever heard of this man's name. But they put this aristocrat onto the job of destroying first the steel industry. In my book in 1980, I said that by 1985 we would have silent blast furnaces. The rolling mills would be stopped. There would be no more shipbuilding. We'd have thousands of skilled workers who'd pass the skills of their trade down for generations, who were forever dispossessed of their jobs. If you go to the northeast United States today, ladies and gentlemen, and I've just been up in Cleveland where I had a very good radio address I gave there, you will find that what I said in 1980 has unhappily come to pass. In 1970, the United States had 5,000 ships built by good United States know-how, using good United States steel. 5,000 ships sailing the high seas. Last year, we had exactly 270 such ships. And at least 50,000 steel workers permanently out of a job, jobs that will never come back. What happened? Did we suddenly lose our marbles? Did we suddenly lose that great American know-how of getting things done? Did we lack finances? Did we run out of money? No. None of those things happened. What happened was this dastardly Club of Rome had sent their emissaries to the United States to deliberately destroy our steel plants. And they did it by opening the doors of so-called free trade. And everybody who signed the NAFTA treaty and everybody who signs the GATT treaty when it passes is a traitor and a seditionist. Our mighty steel industry is destroyed. Our shipyards are silent. Our skilled workers are permanently without a job. And if you don't believe me, get the report of the Club of Rome. You know, when I came out in 1969 with my report on the Club of Rome, nobody had ever heard of it. And people, when they got it, said, "Oh, this guy's paranoid. There's no such organization. It's probably something to do with the Catholic Church." Well, surprise, surprise, 25 years later, last year, the Club of Rome celebrated its anniversary, and Alexander King, its chairman, stated, "The American people henceforth must get used to the idea that they will never, ever again in their lifetime have full employment." What a scandalous thing that our government is fully cooperating with this organization built up by the Royal Institute for International Affairs to destroy the middle class of the United States and to add to the policies of global genocide. And that brings me to the next question. What is the Global 2000? Once again, when I heard about this policy, it was 3 days after it had been accepted by the United States government as its official policy. And the Global 2000 was a blueprint for mass genocide produced by the Club of Rome. Basically, what the Global 2000 calls for is the destruction of half of the world's population by the year 2050. Hence the title 2000. They built a case based on Bertrand Russell and H.G. Wells' findings that the world was going to be overpopulated, would be a terrible place to live in. That was picked up by a fellow called Robert Strange McNamara, and a stranger individual you're not likely to meet in this world. And this fellow had a conference of all the leading bankers about 12 years ago, and he said the biggest menace facing the world today is the American middle class and overpopulation. He linked the two together. And he said, by the year 2050, this is the state of the world. All of these unfed, unwashed people, no jobs. He said, do we want to live in a world like that? So the Global 2000 was a genocidal plan to take care of the people of the United States who don't have any jobs and who, like Alexander King said, are never going to get their jobs back, and the masses of people in other nations. That is why we had the sudden appearance of AIDS. When I was in the service, I was told there's a CAB experiment, that's chemical and bacteriological warfare experiment, going on in Sierra Leone, in Africa. That's a remote corner of Africa, West Africa, just above Liberia. If you look at your map, your atlas, and you'll see where it's located. Why Liberia? Extremely hard country to get to. You have to fly from London. That's the only way you can get there. You land on an island, and then you've got to take a ferry across to the mainland. And, of course, all people taking the ferry are heavily scrutinized. And I managed to work my way. I was told the Americans were doing the CAB experiment. I managed to work my way to within striking distance of a small mission station. And what I discovered was that these blacks were coming in from the bush to this mission station with broken arms or an ulcer on the leg or something like that. And they were ostensibly being treated there, but they were dead by the evening. What was actually going on was that a laboratory had been set up using Lassa fever virus. Now at that time, Lassa fever was one of 4 viruses that could jump the human-animal barrier. And it was a deadly virus. They were trying to create a virus that could be mass-produced and it could be sent out through the World Health Organization to get rid of millions of people in the world. But the Lassa fever virus proved uncontrollable. It killed 3 scientists who were working there. So the orders came from Washington, burn the place to the ground, and that's exactly what they did within a radius of 100 miles. They bottled up some of these viruses they'd been experimenting with and took them back to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. There they began again, but again they escaped and killed 3 more scientists. So they incinerated the whole laboratory, sealed it off and incinerated. The same experiments are now going on in Harvard University right now. But they're not using the Lassa fever virus. That has proved to be too tough for them to handle. Instead, the United States government gave millions of dollars to the United States military chemical and bacteriological warfare establishment at Fort Detrick, and they began experimenting with the AIDS virus. I knew about the AIDS 3 years before the word ever came out in the world, in the United States particularly, because of my field work in Sierra Leone. The British government used their Porton-Down CAB facility. It's easier to get into the Bank of England vaults than to get into Porton-Down. All the deadliest viruses in the world are being crafted there, in pursuance of the goal, the Global 2000, to decimate the world. Shortly after this experiment had finished at Fort Detrick, the World Health Organization started a massive vaccination campaign. They said, for once and for all, we're going to wipe out the scourge of smallpox. They chose Africa and Brazil, launched a massive vaccination campaign. Immediately, AIDS began to appear. Thousands and thousands of people began dying of a strange new virus, which the World Health Organization then said had come from the bite of a green monkey. They forgot to tell you the green monkey's been there for centuries, and he'd been biting people, if he ever did, for centuries, but no disease of that nature had ever occurred. The World Health Organization deliberately took this virus, which was crafted from a series of animal viruses, including Mediavisna sheep, which destroys the brain, which is why you find AIDS patients get dementia probably first before any of the other AIDS-related complex diseases appear. And they began vaccinating innocent people on a massive scale, and they began dying like flies. Why Africa and why Brazil? Because those two countries had the biggest black population in the world. And I want to tell the black people of the United States of America, do not trust the Democrat Party. Do not trust government. Do not believe that government is your friend. To them you are dispensable, the same way as we are. Millions of people died. I went through Uganda on an inspection tour, and I saw whole areas decimated where previously there had been small towns and villages. There was not a living soul in sight. And that is going on today. The AIDS epidemic is completely out of hand. It swept the world. It's been swept under the carpet in the United States of America. We were told that this is a disease which is passed by homosexuals. True enough, but that's not the primary cause of it. This is a crafted virus that was spread throughout the world to decimate the population. Coming behind them, and we reported this about 2 years ago in our World in Review news magazine, is the Vibro 19 cholera virus, a deadly killer. You get this cholera in the morning. If it's not immediately treated with massive doses of expensive antibiotics, you'll be dead in a day and a half. This epidemic swept India, carrying away millions of people. I don't know if you've heard of it in the press. I doubt it. Behind that is a deadly strain of malaria, and some of our forces in Somalia contracted this disease. A strain of malaria which acts almost like the HIV virus. It attacks the human immune system. And behind that, the Black Plague. Now, you've had some experience with Black Plague recently. Experiments were conducted in this area and in California with the Black Plague, distributing them, these plague viruses, to definitive areas by means of enfolded scalar waves using extremely low-frequency radiation, which was a warfare technique developed in 1934 by the great Soviet virologist V.A. Gertchev. This is not Buck Rogers stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This is today's deadly truth. So some of the Indian reservations were targeted, and all of a sudden they began dying of Black Plague. And then we were told, well, the harvest mouse droppings are responsible. Well, the harvest mouse has been doing his droppings for centuries, but none of them got the Black Plague before that. But what happened immediately following the so-called population control meeting in Cairo? There was a sudden and violent outbreak of Black Plague in India. And it is still going on, and it is not under control. This is all part of the Global 2000 mass genocide plan. I know something about the Black Plague because in my research in the British Museum, I discovered that the black Venetian nobility had none of their families or members had ever got the Black Plague. Yet the Black Plague, as you know, swept through Europe and killed half of the population of Europe. But none of their families ever got it. So I began seeking for the answers and I found them in the Cairo Museum. So people said, well, how come, if these things are true, how are they going to protect themselves? They being the Committee of 300, their servants and their families, they have the means of protecting themselves by certain types of herbal compounds mixed with sugar. And they also have, of course, the protection of extremely low-frequency radiation, where using the technology developed by the great virologist Goethe, who proved that every living thing on this earth has a vibratory cycle, and he was able to measure the vibratory cycle of various deadly viruses, and by vibrating them double their cycle, you would kill them instantly. So that's one of the defensive weapons that these people have got that will kill the plague if they ever get it. The same technique, of course, will kill cancer cells. But the medical profession, run by the Rockefeller family and all the pharmaceutical companies, do not want you to know this, because when you go into the doctor, he's going to write you a prescription for a chemical drug. There's no chemical drug benefit out of extremely low-frequency radiation vibration. No profit to these people. So that's the Global 2000. Decimate the world's population and particularly hit hard the United States middle class. How are they financing all of this stuff? They're financing it through the fondi, who I mentioned to you earlier, the Venetian black nobility. Now, why are they called the black nobility? They're called that because of the vileness and the evilness of their deeds. These families date back to the 11th centuries, the Lucatis, the Recanati. They were called, and the Guelphs, by the way, I'll come to them, they're particularly interesting. They were called that because of the evilness of their deeds. They make Lucrezia Borgia look like a Sunday school teacher. They had so much money, which is the outcome of the drug trade, the years of investing, the years of gaining control of every mining, mineral, gold, oil, natural resource of the world, that they can afford to finance these things. So the black nobility are the ancient aristocrats of Venice and Genoa, and they called that because of the nature of their deeds. The black Guelphs were one of the worst of them. Now, interesting enough, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, is a Guelph. She's not a Windsor. This was a title that was evolved in 1935 by her father to put researchers off the track. I like to include myself in that category, although I wasn't doing it then. I was much too young to be doing it, but he didn't like that certain people were getting hot on the track of who this royal family actually was, and so this was put out that they are the House of Windsor. They are not. They're the House of Guelph, and it's important for us to know that, because every time there's a financial crisis, it follows a meeting of the black Guelphs upon the Royal Britannia yacht of the Queen of England, which anchors off the coast of Venice, and all the world bankers meet over there and say, now this is what we're going to do to country X, this is how we're going to control this worldwide situation. And then they go off and give their orders to everybody. So that is the way it is done. I told you earlier that they controlled the United States. Even in the days of President Lincoln, they had him assassinated on the orders of Disraeli. And they then, of course, in later years, were able to elect one of the worst socialists we've ever had the misfortune to suffer under, Woodrow Wilson. Wilson was elected by a ploy. Of course, they got Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party running as a supposedly third candidate to siphon votes off so that Wilson could be elected as a socialist president. Now, our eyes have been fixed on Moscow. We've been led down the garden path, ladies and gentlemen. All of the time we've been looking at Moscow, and we've been told what demons they are in Moscow. Rightly so. But all the time this was going on, the Trojan horse of socialism in Washington, D.C. has been stealing our country away from us. And in my book, Socialism, The Road to Slavery, I give you a full and factual description of exactly how this was done. In 1898, the Fabian Society, a socialist organization, sent Ramsay MacDonald, Prime Minister of England, to the United States to spy out the land. He came back and he said, there are two things in the way. You have a very strong middle class and you have the Constitution of the United States, both of which have got to be destroyed before we can socialize America. The first step they took was getting a socialist president in office in the form of Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was controlled out of England by Sir William Wiseman, head of the North American desk of MI6. Now, in case you don't know MI6, it is the most powerful and the oldest of all intelligence agencies in the world. They taught the CIA. They taught the Vatican intelligence. They taught the French intelligence. They taught the Mossad. They taught the Cheka. Captain Hill of MI6 went out and set up the Mossad. And Captain Hill went to Russia and helped the Bolsheviks set up their single-cell apparatus. Sir William Wiseman was the controller of Wilson through Colonel House. Now, who is Colonel House? He was an unknown person who emerged out of Texas. His father served the Rothschilds during the Civil War, and he emerged out of the war as the only person in Texas who'd made any money. And House was sent to Washington in order to control the first socialist president, and he took his orders from Wiseman, and House lived but a few blocks away from Wilson, and above him, Wiseman had an apartment. And that type of control is not gone. It is still here to this very day, right now, as I speak to you. Other questions? Give us some examples of what you're talking. How do we know that what you're saying is true? I'll refer you to the great soldier son of the United States of America, General Douglas MacArthur, a great patriot, a great warrior, a great Christian. When Douglas MacArthur was in Korea, he and General Stratomayor of the Air Force devised a plan that would have put China out of action for the next 50 years. He submitted this plan to Washington. An arch-socialist, one of the most vilest creatures who ever walked this earth by the name of Dean Rusk, immediately summoned the President of the United States to a meeting in Blair House. And he said, Mr. President, we have seen the plan submitted by General Douglas MacArthur, and there's no way in the world that you can allow him to implement this plan. And Truman said, why not? He said, you know very well that anything that relates to China has to be cleared by the Royal Institute for International Affairs first. And he said, they don't want you to do this. And MacArthur was not allowed to carry out his plan. And 50,000 sons, beautiful Americans, were slaughtered on the battlefields of Korea needlessly because of orders from the Royal Institute for International Affairs. And that same institute is controlling President William Jefferson Clinton to this day. MacArthur was eventually bowler-hatted on the orders of the British government. I mentioned earlier the death of John F. Kennedy. Given the methods that are well known in intelligence circles of how to get rid of bothersome people, it would have been a very simple matter to make it look as though Kennedy had died of a heart attack or some other natural cause. Instead of that, in order to warn every president that would follow in his wake, every powerful person in this country in the know, you do not kick over the traces. You obey us, or you will see what will happen to you. Kennedy was publicly and brutally executed in a plan carried out by British MI6 under the control of Sir William Stevenson and his lieutenant, a Canadian citizen by the name of Major Louis Mortimer Bloomfield. Now, you won't get that in any of the accounts of the Kennedy assassination. You'll find it in my book, The Committee of 300. You'll also find it in my monographs about the Kennedy assassination. Who are these people? Sir William Stevenson ran American intelligence throughout the Second World War out of the RCA building in New York. His second in command, a Canadian citizen, Major Louis Mortimer Bloomfield, ran Division 5 of the FBI counterintelligence. You want examples of how Britain controls this country? I have given you them. I've also told you that every Secretary of State since 1919 is selected by the Royal Institute for International Affairs on the orders of the Committee of 300. Why is this? We go to these conventions and there's all the hoopla in the world. The balloons are flying, the straw boaters are in the air. Bush has been elected conservative president. Reagan has been elected. What happens in reality? The Secretary of State, who's charged with carrying out the policies, subverts each and every one of them. You show me a Secretary of State that has acted in the best interest of the United States of America since 1919, and I will give you the only money that I've got in the bank, which is about $1,500. You're welcome to it, because I know that you will not be able to do that. Every Secretary of State has subverted and acted in a treasonable manner towards the people of this great country. And when they haven't done it directly, they've done it through surrogates like Lachlan Curry, who ordered the military to jettison a shipment of arms destined for the great Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek, to jettison overboard these arms in the Indian Ocean. And that's exactly what they did. We think that we elect our presidents. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not elect our presidents. They are selected for us long before we'd even heard of them. And I've given you 2 examples this morning of how this is done. The 300 office at Aspen keeps a tight control over every political event that takes place in this country. And it was this office, through Margaret Thatcher, that ordered President Bush to violate the Constitution of the United States of America and to violate his own personal oath to uphold the laws of the United States by sending our troops to the Gulf War against Iraq, a nation that had never done us any harm. And we did it by the dirtiest of dirtiest tricks. We got the daughter of one of the Al-Shabaab clan, there are over 400 of these people, and these are the most degenerate, disgusting people that you'd ever come across. The ruler has 140 wives. He doesn't have them all at the same time. When he gets tired of one, he says, I divorce thee 3 times, and she's gone. When the Iraqi troops came in there and they turned it over to the Red Cross in Geneva, 140 marriage certificates. This is the man that your sons and your daughters are propping up today in Kuwait in a most illegal manner, in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. And Bush did a Texas two-step around the Constitution. He did not get the mandatory declaration of war. I'm not a lawyer, but I've studied the annals of Congress, the congressional globes, and the congressional records for 25 years. And in those pages will be found more wisdom, more in-depth information about the Constitution than you'll ever get from any law school. Anyway, most of the law schools have professors far to the left of Marx, and they don't know anything much about the Constitution. I talked to a few people, one lawyer in Congress, I said, what do you know about the Constitution? Well, I got 1 semester of law when I was at law school, and in that was something about the Constitution. Our Constitution is not even taught in the United States school system. Isn't that an utter shame and a resounding disgrace? Bush said the troops... Bush did not get a constitutional declaration of war. This is a very difficult area of the Constitution. It's probably one of the most complex areas of the Constitution. It's a 5-step process that involves both houses making separate declarations, then joint declarations, then the army has to be informed, and then the public has to be informed, and then we have to be told whether this is a private war or a public war, i.e. whether all the armed forces are going to be employed or only one branch. In so-called police actions, the President has 45 days to use only one branch of the service. Bush violated his oath of office by going to the United Nations, to which we do not belong, and getting them to give him a so-called color so that he could send our troops to the Gulf. Our troops to this day are in the Gulf illegally, in violation of the Constitution of America, and we're still paying for it. That's i.e. whether all the armed forces are going to be employed or only one branch. In so-called police actions, the President has 45 days to use only one branch of the service. Bush violated his oath of office by going to the United Nations, to which we do not belong, and getting them to give him a so-called color so that he could send our troops to the Gulf. Our troops to this day are in the Gulf illegally, in violation of the Constitution of America, and we're still paying for it. The story that the Gulf states put up all the money, you go and ask the General Accounting Office, as I did, how much money have they paid? We are still paying for the Gulf War, and now we've got another huge bill to meet, billions of dollars, for Clinton's fantasies, to go out there and support this disgusting Al-Shabaab clan. I don't know if you know the story of Kuwait. It's really a horrendous one. I don't want to get into that too much, but that land was stolen from the Iraqi people by the British imperialists. They came in and drew a line through the sand right through the middle of the most important oil fields that had just been discovered, the Rumelia oil fields. Thenceforth, this is going to be called Kuwait. And they brought up these tame sheikhs from Bahrain and put them in as the rulers. And since then, they've been stealing the oil off Iran, and the proceeds go to the British banks in the city of London for the Committee of 300. They're just doing the same thing now in South Africa with the gold. That's part of their tactics, to gain control of all natural resources through the world. I also touched briefly on Giovanni Agnelli and Mrs. Clinton and how she had left her husband, and Pamela Harriman. Pamela Harriman, for her duties in getting Clinton elected, was given a plum job as ambassador for the United States to France. And this is what happens to the traitors. Patriots are punished and traitors are rewarded. Dennis DeConcini, who voted for the giveaway of our property in Panama and who voted for the crime bill and every other obscenity that is passed by the federal government in violation of the Constitution, he's now going to get a plum ambassadorship when he retires, on top of his huge pension of something like $200,000 a year. I've been asked whether Clinton will stay the full term. Yes, he will. Clinton will stay the full term because he's been given a job to do, and that is to pass certain far-reaching socialist measures. And he's been very successful in doing that with the help of so-called Republicans. I personally am not in favor of political parties. I'm like George Washington. He said, political parties are baneful, and in the long run they are harmful. What happened in NAFTA, a so-called conservative, Mr. Newt Gingrich, who I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw him, went out and acted as the floor manager, as the party whip in true parliamentary style, and he whipped up 132 Republicans, so-called, to support NAFTA. And no doubt he will do the same thing with this dreadful GATT treaty, which is coming up in a vote in the lame duck session. So he's going to run, and I'll let you into some information which I just got a few days ago from French intelligence. Clinton would not be able to run on his record or anything that he's done or anything meritorious. So what he's done, he sent emissaries, and this is the first time you're going to hear this. You might hear it in 1996, but this is the first time you're going to hear this now. He has sent emissaries to Iran to dig and promise huge sums of money to any of the Iranians who will come up with the actual documentation of the scandal where our prisoners were kept there until Reagan was elected the president. And if he can come up with this documentation, he's going to keep them. In 1996, he's going to come out and say to America, I have here documentary proof of how bad your Republicans are, President Bush and Reagan. Look what they did. And on the strength of that, he hopes to run in 1996. That's what he's doing now. He's taking the money that he's not entitled to, and he's using it to bribe the Iranians to come up with these documents. I don't know that they will, because I think they like him even less than I do, and that's saying a lot. What is the Clinton agenda? Clinton has been instructed to socialize America. And let me tell you that the enemy in Washington is more to be feared than the enemy in Moscow. I've said this for years. What does socialism do? It forces changes upon people that they do not want and do not ask for. And we've seen how dangerous that is when we look at the programs that were supposedly programs invented by the United States government and by the presidents. A man called Stuart Chase, an arch-Fabian socialist, wrote a book called A New Deal. Frances Perkins, who was the first female socialist cabinet minister appointed in the United States in the Roosevelt administration, she got hold of a copy of this book and she ran to Roosevelt and said, look, this would be a marvelous program for you. So in the 1932 and by the way, don't call them the Democratic Party because they are not. We are a confederated republic. We are a constitutional republic. In a confederated constitutional republic, you cannot have a Democratic Party. You can have a Democrat Party, and that's what we should start calling them. But she ran up, and Roosevelt was so enamored with this deal that in 1932 they hastily changed their platform, and he came out and announced his New Deal, which is a verbatim, word-for-word program taken from Stuart Chase's book, Socialism, A New Deal. Then when Kennedy came along, he adopted as a wonderful new program called The New Frontier. That just happened to be a book written by Henry Wallace, another Fabian socialist writer. Word for word, The New Frontier was co-opted as Kennedy's program. Then when Johnson came along, he came out and started talking about the Great Society. Now, what was the Great Society program? It was another Fabian socialist book written by another fellow called Graham Wallace, no relation to the first Wallace, names spelled differently. So here we have three presidents of the United States following an outright course of socializing the United States of America. And of course, every president, including Reagan and Bush, has continued along those lines. And what do we have? Our Social Security. That was called the Beveridge Plan. In 1942, when Britain had its back to the wall, was losing hands down to the German armies in France, they needed something to buck up the population. So Sir William Beveridge came along with this plan. He said, we're going to abolish poverty in Great Britain. And they started this Beveridge Plan, which is the basis of our socialist Social Security Plan. Note, I said socialist Social Security Plan. That's how we got it. It was co-opted directly from the Beveridge Plan, very eagerly embraced by Roosevelt. Socialism is a failure. Lenin was once asked, what is socialism? And he said, socialism, he said, no, he was, sorry, I got the story wrong. He was asked, what is communism? And he said, communism is socialism in a hurry. And we have creeping socialism in this country today, which has nowhere to go but to communism. In the New World Order, one world government. That is the direction that William Jefferson Clinton is pushing this country as hard as he can go. And GATT is an integral part of that. The socialist policies of England failed miserably. They got the great Professor Harold Lasky of the London School of Economics. I once was asked to give a talk there, and it was me against 600 hostile left-wing students. And I had a pretty torrid time of it to start with, but in the end I did get a very good hearing from them. But that same Professor Lasky was sent to the United States to see how the Constitution could be got around. And he said, there's one good way we have to do it. We have to break down this provision that says there's no transfer of powers between the three branches. And we have that happening every day. We have Clinton calling himself the Commander-in-Chief, which he's not. I sent a fax to Colonel Oliver North the other day, in which I explained in detail what the Constitution has to say about the Commander-in-Chief. I hope he was able to use it. He said that Clinton is not the Commander-in-Chief, but he was saying it for the wrong reasons, for personal reasons. The Constitution is perfectly clear on this. It says that the President shall not be the Commander-in-Chief until such times as called into actual service by the Congress. And in my studies I came across this proviso that that could only happen after a careful 5-step declaration of war mandated by the Constitution. And that is the sum and substance of the President's war-making powers. Unfortunately for us, during the time of the Civil War, Lincoln got the Congress to give him the power of habeas corpus, which is a privilege, by the way, not a right. And he was able to do things that were monstrous, which would never have been done. Why Clinton is telling everybody he's the commander-in-chief, it's not out of ignorance, as I pointed out to Colonel North in my facts. It's a deliberate, carefully crafted plan to get the people of the United States used to the idea that he is actually the commander-in-chief. And I tell you, he is not. The Constitution says he is not, and I can give you chapter and verse. Because should there a time come when he wants to take some drastic kind of action, he can then get Congress controlled by the Democrats, even a lame duck Congress, to give him the power of suspension of habeas corpus, and can say, as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces, I hereby order XYZ to happen. It is a deadly danger, and we are fast asleep. I tried to alert Colonel North to exactly what's going on about the so-called Commander-in-Chief, and I only hope that he will put it to good use, because I do not have the same forum that he does. Anyway, socialism is a total failure. When it began to sink in England, they sent John Maynard Keynes, or Keynes. He said Keynes was a better word because it rhymed with brains, and this is the man who did in the economy of every Western country. And he came to the United States, and by his charm and good looks, he was a tall, well-spoken English gentleman, immaculately suited, connoisseur of wines and cheeses, and it was said of him that there was not a single lady who could resist his amorous advances. He was able to charm Roosevelt into giving the British government $3 billion to prop up their socialist programs. That wasn't enough. They then sent Harold Lasky and John Maynard Keynes for a second handout. This time they got $7 billion. And when Roosevelt was asked about this, he said, let's forget all of those silly little dollar signs. And the same thing is happening today in the field of foreign endeavor. We find a president giving away billions of dollars in foreign aid, which he is not entitled to do. I have searched the congressional records, the congressional globes, the annals of Congress, to find out if there is an empowerment for the federal government, our Congress, to dish out billions of dollars every year like a Santa Claus to foreign nations. And I could not find it anywhere. And where the Constitution is silent on a provision, it means it is a prohibition of that provision. What I did find was that when President Monroe was trying to get us involved in Latin America, he tried to get some money sent down there. And the Congress stood on its hind legs and said, this is a matter that's out of your purview. This is a matter for the Congress, and we deny you foreign aid because it's not constitutional. And that is what set Monroe at variance with the Congress. If you know his history, he spent his entire life fighting the Congress over that issue. Nothing has changed. The Constitution of the United States is immutable. I violently disagree with Justice Ginsburg, who says the Constitution is flexible. The Constitution is not flexible. Our founding fathers meant it to be an immutable document that would stand the test of the ages of time and foil people like William Jefferson Clinton and Roosevelt and every other dictator that is going to follow, unless we stand up and take back our states' rights. What is the political future of the United States? I told you that we are being forced into a one-world government, new world order, by the use of the word democracy and by the use of the word global trade and free trade. There is no such thing as free trade. The United States made itself great by its own manufacturing abilities. We had our people fully employed. We had our people who could buy all the products that we made. We did not need global trade. If people wanted the privilege of selling on our markets, they had to pay customs tariffs. And did you know that up to 1913, all the money that it took to run the United States came from customs tariffs? We had no income tax. And in 1913, we had a surplus of $5 billion after all our bills were paid. Now comes Socialist Wilson, and the first thing he does, he calls for a joint session of Congress, and he said, we've got to stop this isolationist. Ladies and gentlemen, this word isolation is a smear word. It's intended to deceive you. We do not need global trade. We need full employment. We need our people back in full-paying jobs. We need our industries revitalized. We have today 40 million unemployed Americans, and Alexander King has stated the policy of the Club of Rome, followed slavishly by William Jefferson Clinton. Americans can forget about full employment in the future forever. 40 million, those are the real figures. We have 25 million people underemployed, people with great skills who are acting as doormen in hotels, flipping hamburgers, for God's sake. These people, and they talk, Mr. whatever his name is, Reich or whatever it is, he says, oh, the Clinton administration has created 2 million new jobs. Well, I don't like to pick on his size, but I think it's gone to his head, if you get the drift of my meaning. There's no 2 million jobs of any magnitude being created. He's talking about makeshift jobs. We have the biggest underpaid, underemployment class in the world today, and we have the middle class totally destroyed by the socialist administration, and Clinton is hand in glove with him and going along with him as fast as he can go. We have become the dumping ground for the world's products, and that has put our people out of jobs, reduced our standard of living, the object of the exercise being that one day we shall be no better than a third world country as far as our standard of living. Take the shoe industry. In 1950, only 4% of shoes sold in America were imported shoes. Every president that came along knocked down the tariffs against shoes, imported shoes. Today you have China, Taiwan, Malaysia. 84% of shoes sold in America come from those countries, which means a total unemployment in the shoe industry of this country of over 250,000 people. Isn't that a scandal and a disgrace? That we open our doors and allow these people who we subsidize with foreign aid to come back and dump their products and put our people out of work. In future, historians are going to say, this was the maddest nation on earth to allow this insidious war to be waged against them. And that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is a war to the death for the United States of America. The only thing that is making it unrecognizable as a war, there are no big drums being beaten, there are no flags waving, but we are being insidiously destroyed in a trade war. And GATT is a coup de grace to kill off the American middle class for once and for all. And while in passing to GATT, did you know that one of the provisions, I've read the 26,000 pages of this GATT document, and I want to tell you, I don't believe a single one of our senators or our members of the House have read this document. One of the provisions that I found out is at birth, once GATT is in control, every child born in the United States will have to have an IRS number. Another thing that I found, the GATT financiers, and this is a massive bureaucracy, are going to come in and they are going to limit the type of dividends that you can earn on your investments from bonds. What happened? Immediately this news broke, the gnomes of the bond market took their money and they fled to Basel, Switzerland, and they put all their money in the Bank of International Settlements in gold, Swiss francs, and that's why you have the attack on the dollar going on today. This is a war to the death against the people of the United States. The Committee of 300 wants to reduce us through socialism into a nation no better than the third world countries. Look at this insidious GATT treaty. Do you know that the United States, the mighty United States, has one vote, the same as Kenya or Haiti? And we are going to pay 7/10 of the huge bill. And this organization is going to supplant the laws of this country. one of the provisions of the WTO is that their board will be able to go in and demand of individual states that they change their laws and take us to the courts if we don't do it. Where is the president who said he would uphold and protect the individual states and their rights to a republican form of government? This GATT treaty is one of the most insidious, unbelievable attacks on the United States that I've ever come across. Let me tell you that if the Russians were to drop a couple of nuclear bombs on Washington, and that might be such a bad thing, let me tell you that they could never hope to do the damage that GATT is going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to marshal every one of your resources. This GATT treaty has got to be fully debated. Once before, twice before, we were forced by the one world government, new world order into far-reaching situations that affected the national life and the character of our people without a national debate. The first one was the so-called United Nations question mark treaty. In 1946, this treaty was forced through the Senate by an exercise of arbitrary power. Arbitrary power is forbidden by the Constitution. Yet you have Comrade Dictator Mitchell, the leader of the Senate, saying he's going to allow about 2 days to debate GATT, which is 26,000 pages of documents. That is an exercise of arbitrary power. If we had any men of guts in the Senate, so-called conservatives, they would walk out en masse and say, we are not taking part in this effort to denigrate and destroy the Constitution of the United States of America. And you can imagine what an effect that would have. GATT will be allowed to be debated for 2 days, 26,000 pages, and some of the most insidious things that you've ever seen are in this document, and they all, every one of them, say GATT shall override all the laws of the United States. The President and our senators and our House members are supposed to uphold the law of the United States. If they sign GATT, they're guilty of sedition and treason. Period. That's it. This came as a natural outflow of the United Nations Treaty. I found there that 5 senators, listen to this for a disgrace, ladies and gentlemen, 5 senators actually read this United Nations document. Again, it was 53,000 pages long. 5 senators, and they had 3 days to read this document, and it was then rammed down the people of the United States. I want to tell you that we do not belong to the United Nations. One of the greatest constitutional scholars it was ever my great pleasure to speak with was the late Senator Sam Ervin, who told me there's no way under the noonday sun that we could ever have joined in the United Nations. We did not join the United Nations, and we do not belong to it now. I've written a little work called Is the United States a Member of the United Nations? And you'll find in there, I give you chapter and verse constitutionally why we cannot be. 1965, we had another national calamity without a national debate. The Democrats reformed immigration. Now notice, every time some far-reaching thing happens, then the socialists come along with the reform. It's to reform health, which, by the way, Lenin said a national health plan is the arch of socialism. So now you know where Clinton got his national health program from. He took it straight out of the Communist Manifesto of 1848. They were not satisfied with immigration as it was. The bulk of the people came from those who were related to the Jeffersons, the George Washingtons, the Davy Crockett's. They were not satisfied with that. Without a national debate, without asking the people of this country by your leave, the Democrats in 1965 forced through an Immigration Reform Act that totally changed the face of the United States and will totally change us. And one of the architects of that was the same Dean Rusk the swine who stopped MacArthur from bombing the Chinese back to the Stone Age, and, of course, Nicholas Katzenbach. I want to give you some statistics. Now, people have accused me, they said, you are a racist. First of all, the word racist is a very modern smear word. If you look in the dictionaries in 1919 onwards, it did not exist. What they really mean to say is you are a racialist, i.e. a person who's proud of your race. I'm not saying this against any group, any nationality. I want to show you how the socialists, without our permission, without a national agenda, without a national debate, will change the face of the United States. In 1984, the people from traditional immigration stock made up 74% of the total population. By the year 2080, less than 100 years from now, we will make up 39.5% of the population. And it goes on. The Hispanics were 9.4 in 1980, they'll be 15.4. The Asians, 2.4, will be 13.3 of the population. In other words, the traditional Americans of the Davy Crockett, George Washington, the people Monroe said would make a real contribution to America, will be in the distinct minority. And this is thanks to the Democrat Party, who in 1965, without by your leave of the people, changed the rules. And now they've got us blindsided by concentrating on illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is nothing. That's a small problem. The legal immigration that was authorized in 1965 without your permission, that's where the big problem lies. These statistics were provided to me by a man called Lee Bouvier, who was one of the leading advisors to a former INS official. And of course we know that abortion is another way in which the population is being diminished. I have challenged judges all across the country to show me in the United States Constitution, where is there provision for abortion? And I've yet to see. Oh, they say in the Fourth Amendment. Don't you believe it? The Fourth Amendment has nothing to do. It doesn't mention the word abortion. And where a word is not mentioned in the Constitution, it is a prohibition of that word. There's no such thing as free choice. This is a communist doctrine brought to this country by a woman called Madame Calonte. Madame Calonte you've probably never heard of, but she is the inventor, the author and the finisher of NOW and NARL and abortion. It's all in my book, Socialism, The Road to Slavery. Where do we stand now? I told you that we're in danger because the separation of powers mandated by the Constitution are being broken up every day. You now have the idiocy of Clinton having line item veto. That means if he doesn't like something, he can go and veto just that line that he doesn't like. That is breaking down the separation of powers forbidden by the Constitution. Also meddling in trade. The President has no right to be meddling in any treaty whatsoever. That is strictly for the House according to the Constitution of the United States. And I dealt with the Commander-in-Chief situation already. We need to understand the seriousness of the Commander-in-Chief. Lincoln said that if we allow this title, he said, we are then putting presidents where kings stood. And he said one of the most hated powers of kings was their ability to make war at any whim that came to their mind. And if we do not stop this Commander-in-Chief nonsense with Clinton, that's where we're going to find ourselves. We are already there with Haiti, and we are already there with our troops being sent to Kuwait. I want to tell you that the cost of the Middle East peace so far, to you, the American taxpayers, is $38 billion, and the clock is still running. Jordan was given $4 billion to sign this treaty. The other nations have been guaranteed credits and all sorts of things that will bring up the total to $38 billion for this so-called peace accord in the Middle East to come about. Of course, it's doomed to failure, but that doesn't matter. In the meantime, it makes the President of the United States look good. We need to understand something. I told you today there's anarchy and chaos in Washington. That is because the United States government is a government of strictly limited empowerment. It cannot just willy-nilly go making bills. For a measure to be introduced into the House, it has to be in consonance with or in pursuance of something already in the Constitution. If it is not, it is unconstitutional. And I've looked at 3,000 bills passed in recent years, and every one of them are unconstitutional because they were new things that some lighter-than-air incendiary fairy-head liberal said, well, I'm going to introduce this into the Congress. I'm going to have this law passed, like Dianne Feinstein's 19 assault rifles banned. There's no thing in the Constitution that would allow her to do that. Specifically, the 10th Amendment is very, very precise, and I can quote you 54 instances where this is mentioned in the Annals of Congress, the Congressional Records and Globes. The 10th Amendment is a restriction on the federal government. Our founding fathers were very frightened to give unlimited powers to the federal government. Daniel Webster said we must cage them like a lion, must not give them unlimited powers. It is a government of limited powers, but particularly the 18 Amendments. And just to make sure that the federal government would understand this, in the 18th Amendment, there's a little title that's very important. It says they can only do things that are necessary and proper. And I want to ask you, is rushing our troops off to Kuwait to protect the income of the decadent al-Sabah family, whose money goes to the Royal Institute of International Affairs banks in London, is that necessary and proper for the United States to be doing? We don't get any benefit out of that. No. The 18th Amendment, necessary and proper. The 10th Amendment, the police powers of health, education, and police protection are entirely reserved for the states. And I can quote you 48 court cases from the Annals of Congress, from the statements made by the Founding Fathers. Those powers were never surrendered to the federal government. Therefore, the federal government has no business interfering in health matters, national health plan, no business interfering in crime bills, that's a matter for the states, and no business interfering particularly with the Second Amendment. I was in New York the other day on a radio program, and a very irritated, angry lady said she was a professor of law from Columbia. She came in on the program and she said, you don't know what you're talking about. She said, it's not a right to bear arms. I told her exactly what was what. And she said, well, if that's true, then voting is a right. I said, no, voting has never been a right. The only rights and the only civil rights we got are found in the Fifth Amendment. And that's all. Forget the 1868 Act. That was done when the United States, the southern states, were under occupation. They were occupied countries. Forget Nicholas Katzenbach's 1964 Civil Rights Act. The only civil rights we've got are those contained in the Fifth Amendment. And health, education, and police powers belong to the states. Mrs. Feinstein has no right passing a bill classifying 19 types of assault weapons. What is an assault weapon anyway? Any gun is an assault weapon. That's what you use guns for. You use it to shoot people or animals or protect yourself. Any gun is an assault weapon. A knife is an assault weapon. You know, now they have this poor, almost idiot Brady running around the country. They're using him shamefully to push for gun control. This man doesn't know whether he's Arthur or Martha at the moment. This is not an issue of gun control. This is an assault on the Constitution of the United States of America in total. You cannot take one part of the Constitution and attack it and exclude the others. And this is what it is. It is an attack upon the Constitution of the United States of America. We need to understand about GATT. I'd like to go back to that a little bit. Michael Carpenter, the Attorney General of Maine, and 46 other Attorney Generals of the states wrote a letter to Clinton last July, and they asked him, please, Mr. President, let us have a national conference of all attorneys general of the states on this matter. Clinton refused to answer him. Instead, he got his Hollywood lawyer pal, Mickey Cantor, whose only expertise in the world is running around with a Hollywood crowd. He's a Hollywood lawyer. And suddenly, Clinton puts him in charge of trade. Trade wars, GATT, is piracy. It will destroy the livelihood of the people of this nation. What is the situation facing us right now? There's an attack on the dollar. The gnomes of the bond market are fleeing. I've written a work called The Economic Implosion, Year of Crisis, 1995, in which I predict the collapse of our economic system as we know it today, in pursuance of the GATT Treaty. One of the things I know for a fact that this will be an implosion, i.e. our system will collapse on the ground at which it now stands. It's not going to be an explosion that will scatter everything. And we know that GATT will come in and say how much you can get for your interest. They will also put the International Monetary Fund in charge of our finances, and banking in this country will be in the control of 5 major banks. That will help to control the situation and further destabilize the country. That is the aim and object of all of this. Once a nation is destabilized, it's very easy to deal with it and push it into a socialist new world order, a one world government. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to you today, the time has come for us to recognize that we are 50 individual nations. We have all the rights of an individual nation. We gave only limited empowerments to the federal government. They have grossly, flagrantly violated the concord that we have with them. Therefore, we, the masters, have the right to go to Washington and tell them, the servants, henceforth, this concordat is severed, unless we understand from today all of these unconstitutional measures will be rolled back and a new system will come into being. The Federal Reserve Bank, that private enterprise bank, will be put out of business. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not anarchy. This is the God-given right of each of the 50 nations, of which the state of New Mexico is an individual nation. We are the only entity in the entire world that has a legal document that allows us to dissolve the federal government without resorting to violence and bloodshed. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you from my own experience that I have seen a rising tide in this country in the last 5 years. And I say to you today, in my closing remarks, let us catch the wave. My own plan is to form an organization, a foundation, if I can get people with money to back me, where I will teach what I've learned from the Constitution, what I've gleaned from the annals of Congress, the Congressional Globes, and the Congressional, to maybe 100 educators, lawyers, if you will, other people who are interested. Teach them what I know, which is enough for them to confound the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, not to mention those fairy heads we have in the House and Senate. They, in turn, will spread across the land, teaching others, and they, in turn, will teach others until we have a grassroots movement that is spread across this nation of people who really know, not just to recite the Constitution, but know all of the provisions, the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts, who, when somebody like Mitchell says, we're going to give 2 days for this gap treaty to be debated, 1 million people will demand and tell him that you, sir, are exercising arbitrary power and you shall not be allowed to do this, and quote the Constitution. We could do that with every one of these unconstitutional measures. It is the federal government that is creating anarchy, not we, the people. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.